Yeah, so one nice thing about that is it's already sterilized. Yeah. Seeing that it's 7 o'clock, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This meeting is being televised by Chelmsford TeleMedia. If there anybody here that's recording the meeting, if you'll let me know. Seeing none. Thank you all for coming out. We will open our meeting with public input. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add? Will be lots of opportunity during the meeting to talk as well, but if there's anything that you want to say initially. Seeing none. This is our agenda for tonight. We're going to start with a new playground project update and discussion. I'd like to, Megan is here from the Harrington Girl Scout troop to talk about the buddy bench. And I was wondering if we might take that out of order so we don't force her to sit through the entire meeing. Is that okay with everyone?
That sounds good. Well, you don't want to sit here for 3 hours worth of other discussion. We don't know.
So at the last meeting, I think it was the last meeting, we had talked about the offer that Megan approached us with about creating a buddy bench. One of the Girl Scout troops sponsoring a buddy bench at the playground. And Megan, would you mind coming up and sitting up here and talking to us so we can catch you on the microphone?
Sure.
Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you had in mind?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Megan Marnell. I'm a co-leader of a Girl Scout troop from Harrington School. Most of the girls from Harrington. They're young, so it's first graders. We have about 16 girls, and one of the activities that we will do as just part of the Girl Scouts, the badges that they earn, is to do a take action project. And that really aligns with the playground. So, reached out to see if there's anything we could contribute. And one of our thoughts was a buddy bench, and it sounded like that was something you were already talking about. So wanted to, just talk to see what you had in mind, how we could figure out something to align what we'd love to do with what the playground needs.
Does anybody want to start?
So, well, I guess there were a couple of questions because you can see one picture, right? So it's like a metal one that's stamped. So we were thinking like, okay, what would be the materials that you might be thinking about using to actually build it? Or were you thinking, would you purchase one? What were your thoughts around there?
Honestly, pretty open.
Okay.
So there is a buddy bench at the Harrington School that's wooden. So that's, and I mean, I've obviously seen a lot of wooden ones, but I know that there's certain thoughts about the playground in terms we want to make sure that things last. We want to make sure that they have the right look as well. So kind of kept with an open mind. I mean, if we've raised money as a troop, so certainly purchasing something and having the girls do that could be something we can do. If there's anything that we could do that would be a little more of us kind of contributing to a build for it, either around it or of the bench, then that would be great too. And you see them a lot with like handprints on them and things.
Yeah, and I think when we talked about this, the meeting that we were in the other room, I think we discussed that I thought the wooden bench was probably more in keeping with the idea of and a painted wooden bench, and I like that idea, and I love the idea of the handprints and stuff. And I was trying to get Google to come up with pictures that we came up with last time. There's like a whole, you Google buddy bench and there's a whole slew of different types of pictures of different types of things. But I like the idea of the kids getting involved and having it, be cheerfully colored and.
So potentially, could it be something where because I know the DPW is getting benches anyway, so could we have a bench from the DPW and give it to you, and then you guys paint it and decorate it and make it actually a buddy bench instead of just a regular bench? Is that?
I guess it's doable. I don't know if we necessarily need to. I mean, if you have something specifically in mind, style-wise, I don't think we have to necessarily, because I don't know that the DPW is really committed to the style and type of bench that they want to use. They've talked about possibly reusing those ones that they pulled out that were wooden and steel, but I don't.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So.
I was just saying, to keep with the theme of the park, if we were going to have like 5 benches, right? 1 or 2 of them were going to be buddy benches, to keep them all the same, except the buddy bench would just be a buddy bench.
Yeah. Here's my concern with that. I'll just be frank. They pulled those out and kind of piled them up, and I'm concerned that they're going to be in usable shape.
Yeah, the ones that they pulled. Yeah, I don't know.
So I think
I would suggest a fresh bench for the buddy bench.
I would suggest fresh benches all around because.
Right.
The idea, if we have this great new playground and park, and then all of a sudden these old benches. I don't know.
The splinters from the old park still come with. Sorry.
Yeah. And I know
Although
the
it would
idea
be keeping in our theme of trying to maintain that connection
Yeah,
to
sure,
the
I agree.
park.
Yeah.
I think if we could, that would
Splinters
be
for
great.
all.
Yeah.
Are you guys comfortable with, I think that, I heard the committee saying that they would prefer to have a wooden structure, maybe the seating, but still maybe have steel components that anchor it into the ground, just
Right,
to make
so
it
like-
durable.
Like this
Yeah, you
Here's-
can show that. Yeah.
wide swath of buddy benches off of Google. So, I mean, something, you know, that there's wood, there's metal. There's, sorry to tell upside down. I think that's wood and metal. But,
Right,
I mean,
it's like a frame.
you know, a metal frame with, you know, with the wooden slats that you guys could paint and,
Mhm.
you know, stencil.
Does that fit with kind of what you had in mind?
Yeah, I mean, really open, so yeah,
Okay.
it fits.
Okay.
It's a bench.
Yeah. So I think from our perspective, the expectations would be that it would be not all steel and not all wood, right? Maybe a combination of the two. Would be decorative and obviously kid-friendly and sort of in its painting and design, right?
Yeah.
If it had nature themes to go with it, that would be cool. If you guys put leaves or something on
Right.
it, then you could.
Or paint little animals
If
on
you
it.
painted leaves or animals and went with that sort of,
Mm-hmm.
you guys wanted to be artistic. I don't know. You have 6-year-olds, so
It's 16 girls, and out of the M and all their families, we can.
I was gonna say if you could. I mean, the rainbows are cool and stuff, but if you, as like seems like most of these are very rainbowy. If you had something that was more nature themed with plants or animals on it, I think that would be very cool as part of in keeping with the nature theme that we were trying to go for. And I assume whatever it will have buddy bench or not.
And then in terms of placement, so we have, let me see if I can go back to, we have a 2 to 5 area, which is the area on the upper right section, kind of where that red brick pathway is leading to. That's the 2 to 5 area, and then down on the lower part, that's the 5 to 12 area. And our thoughts were that that the bench might be somewhere in the center between those two. Is that fitting for location wise? Or?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be good if it was welcoming to both older and younger.
Okay, makes sense.
Not just a little kid's buddy bench, but
Mhm.
like a middle schoolers need
Right, yeah.
need buddies too, sometimes more.
And in terms of timing, we have a projected grand opening of June 23rd.
Okay.
So site work is going to happen in the month of May, so probably in somewhere around June 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in that week would probably be the time when we want to install it. Would that fit with, would that give you enough time to get the fundraising done and painting and all the stuff
Yeah, I
done?
think that timing's good, really, just so we can have it. I mean, we'd like to do it within the school year, and June gets crazy anyway.
Yeah, right. So what would be a good date for you to say that we can have it, we can have everything wrapped up by June 1st? What's a good date? You can get back to us too, I
Yeah,
don't want to hold you to it.
I'll get back to you. I mean, if we
Okay.
say like generally the first week in June, but I'll confirm with you.
Okay. Is that
Yeah.
jive with you?
Yeah.
And if you need any help with fundraising, promoting it, we're
Mhm.
more than happy to help there. There's lots of places we can help get the word out. Just let us know.
Okay, great, thank you.
And what was the troop number?
62358.
Great. Is there any other identifying, it's just troop 62358?
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's a
That's you.
Daisy Scout troop, but.
Daisy Scout?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can reference that.
Well, then, a bench with daisies on it, and the handprints just seems.
And so do you have timing in terms of other benches there? I mean, did you want us to consider that at all in terms of like keeping with the same like general like structure of other benches? Or is it gonna be a while till you know about other benches for the park?
When do you think you would need to know a design, I guess, because it sounds like you're going to probably have to purchase something, or would you actually have somebody build something You don't know?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, if you have a general idea for when you'll have a sense for the benches, then I can just like meet with my co-leader and we can work out timelines.
Okay, I would say we should know by the 1st of May, right? I mean, if we're gonna be doing site work there, they should have the benches locked down by then, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's too short of a time period, a month for you guys to do.
That would go a month to, for them to buy or build up until the first week of June.
So do we just need to reach out to Steve and say, hey, have you guys made a decision on whether or not you're gonna use the reclaimed benches or you're gonna buy new ones? And then if he says we're gonna use the reclaimed ones, then we know. Or if they're gonna buy new ones, then I'm assuming he's gonna order them pretty quick.
See, I can't speak to that because I don't know what his timeline is. And
That's what I'm saying, we just have to ask him.
yeah, but I'm just trying to build in enough of leeway for that. So I was thinking maybe May 1st, if we could, would that be enough time for you? Would a month be enough time
Yeah,
for you?
I'm sure that would be fine because it's really, I mean,
Yeah,
just
'cause he
ordering
should
things and
buy
putting it
May 1st.
together.
Okay.
I would think he would know that.
So done by the first week of June, and then we need to get back to you with any design considerations or styles or anything that you would need to adhere to by the first week of May. Does that
Yeah, so
seem
we'll
fair?
plan on like basically a month to work on it for my troop.
Perfect.
That makes sense. And then just, in the interest of being cost conscious, you mentioned those benches, so if there is an opportunity, I guess I don't know how many benches were put aside, but if there is an opportunity to use like the steel part of the bench, is that something we could consider for the buddy bench too?
Yes, and I'll reach out to Steve and ask him about that specifically.
Maybe we should just put Steve directly in touch with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up wherever.
Okay, let me kind of set the situation with him, and then I'll copy all you guys on the email, and we'll get it going. But we'll shoot for the first week of May to have all the details of what it should be made of and looked, and how we're going to go by the first week of May, and then have everything done by the 1st of June. And I'm guessing the DPW would probably be the ones to install it, as they are installing everything else.
Yeah.
Or potentially volunteers on the June 2nd and 3rd.
And then I guess with that, if there's like a color theme, like I know, I mean, they're generally colorful, but I know like when I've seen like a lot of the playground things, it has more of like the nature colors, so.
Right. I mean, as I was saying, like the rainbows are all very, I mean, that's a lot of what seems to be on Google, but I think if it was like more subtle.
Right, okay.
I think more greens and browns and nature-y things with flowers or something, but maybe not primary,
It doesn't have to be.
all
yeah.
primary
Okay.
colors. That's my two
Yeah, I
thoughts. If
agree.
we wanted to blend in with the nature theme that we're trying to go for,
So it can be clear.
Kid friendly.
Kid friendly, buddy bench, but it doesn't have to be like.
neon.
Sensory overload.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Okay, we'll try not to ruin that. for you.
Friendly, but not overly.
Scary.
Yeah.
Overwhelming.
Yes.
Okay, we'll try to manage the overwhelmingness of our 16.
Good luck. You have 16 6-year-olds, so it might be overwhelming in and of itself.
Great. Any other questions, or?
No, I don't think so. I think this sounds fine. And I mean, yeah, plenty of options for benches. So I think if we can, might as well just stay in line with whatever theme. And
Okay.
certainly, anything we can reuse is nice.
Right. All right. Perfect. As long as they're in good enough condition to not,
exactly.
injure the 6-year-olds trying to paint them.
Yeah, we don't want it to backfire. So.
Well, it's an awesome idea. Thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much
you.
for
Yeah, thank you.
coming forward and reaching out to us, and I'm excited about it. This is a perfect example of how I think the community can really make this our park.
Absolutely.
So it's great. So thank you very much and thank your co-leader, and then also the girls for taking on this project. I think it's going to be terrific.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks.
and also thank you because we're trying to make this space very inclusive, something that the town really hasn't had in terms of a playground before. So having the Girl Scouts do this and specifically have it as a buddy bench that, this is all about friendship is so perfect.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Yeah, it's exciting. So great. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thanks. All right, so I'm going to jump back to our original agenda. We'll talk about, I have a quick update from Steve, I don't see here today. And then we'll have a longer discussion about the natural play area. And then we'll get into just some other details. But the majority of our meeting is going to be talking about the natural play area today. So this is at the last meeting, Marcus, you provided Steve with a recommendation to modify the fence plan. And this is the fence plan that Steve sent back, which I think...
That's not the one that I sent him.
So it made the accommodations of the lower part, including the second tree there.
Yeah, he didn't change the upper part.
But the upper part didn't change.
Yeah, and that to me was the most important, because that's the most green space, right? That's where we have the ability for people to have picnics or kids to run around. Like, outside of that, there really isn't a lot, right? And that was a big ask of everybody, to have that open, grass space for kids.
And also to include that tree inside the fence line.
And to include the tree inside the fence line. So I think, I mean, hopefully we can go back to them and say, hey, no, this isn't going to work. We need to follow that perimeter line.
So would you like to make the recommendation that we ask Steve to make the modifications that we had discussed at the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Is everyone in agreement with that? Okay, so...
and I think we'd even talked about how you could snub nose the bottom right-hand side, decrease the area on the bottom right, but I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah, I would.
But
I think if he's okay with that, I'd leave it, because again, it gives us more interior. But let's push that piece out a little bit.
Okay with
the bottom right corner? I would just leave it. Yeah, I think it's...
But but the committee is in agreement that
we'd like the tree.
We'd like the area of the tree included in that upper left-hand part, like what was discussed at the last meeting. Okay. He also pointed out, and I think you guys had discussed this before, but just I want to call it out, that there's a double fence on the top that would allow mowers in, and then there's 3 openings. There's the 2 on the bottom, the one where the covered bridge is the main entrance, and then there's another entrance where the brick walkway goes into. And while we're on this slide, can we go ahead and talk about, this is really a Friends of Roberts Field thing, but it came up at the last meeting. We're fundraising for a new brick pathway. And we talked about 2 options, and it's sort of always fluid. But how do you guys feel about, we had talked originally about connecting the upper parking lot to the existing brick pathway. But I think, Elizabeth, you brought up the idea of, instead of doing that, connecting the existing brick pathway with a new brick pathway that would actually go on the interior of the plan.
Right, and I think that does 2 things. One, it gives us continuity from the old to the new, but it also, the big thing I see with it is that we're selling the bricks as being part of the playground, and if you connect the pathway to the parking lot with the bricks, they're not really part of the playground, and there will be questions, and I think it would feel more as if it's going towards the cost of the playground. We know we need that inside path. That an inside path is part of the cost of the playground, one way or another. So if the bricks are part of the inside path, then you actually are doing the inside playground path with monies from the bricks, if that, everyone following? I have my own little path there.
Right.
Especially if it leads to the new covered bridge, as opposed to a completely separate entrance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, hopefully we'll get all the way from the old to the new, but I think if we do it, if we go from that edge where the old pathway was down past the little kids' playground, as far as we can go, as far down as we can go, if we could make it all the way to the new one, yeah, if we could make that whole distance, that would be great. I think it's going to be a lot of bricks, but...
It doesn't all have to be sold bricks, because just like the old path,
there
are bricks there that are essentially just placekeepers.
Right.
Where that was the original plan, but that's where the fundraising ended. So having the blank bricks in there also is perfectly fine.
What about the idea, I just thought of this, if we don't have enough bricks to make it the whole way, and it kind of, I don't know if it would look weird, but would it be possible, or too much work, to take the bricks that we have and almost scatter them around the path, inside the path walkway, right? So if it's a concrete, right, and we place the brick, it's surrounded by concrete, and throughout the whole path of the whole park,
Yeah.
there's bricks all the way around, like just in different places all the way around the park.
You
So people
might-
can go run around and like they have to look and find their brick, and it's as you're walking around the park, the whole path.
Aesthetically, I like the idea of that in terms of materials and winter
Yeah,
and
I'm thinking the
structure. I'm thinking you're gonna end up with a lot of stumble stones effectively because of how concrete and the bricks are probably gonna move different from the concrete with the frost and
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not a
Yeah.
And ice
civil
between
engineer,
them will
but-
create chips
Yeah.
Right.
and such, so.
it's a cool idea
was-
aesthetically
yeah.
speaking.
That's what I was
I'm
thinking,
just
it's
not
gonna be
sure
kinda
that
neat, yeah.
material science wise it's
So do I get the
Unfeasible,
sense that
but-
you guys like the idea of having the brick pathway on the inside of the playground, like connecting the original pathway to the new main structure, versus having the pathway connect from the parking lot to the existing
To
brick
the-
pathway?
You mean to the
covered bridge.
where the new covered bridge is going to be? You're thinking? Yeah.
So you guys prefer to have this brick pathway continue here
Mm-hmm.
versus having the pathway outside the playground connecting to.
Oh, I would. Yeah. If anything, I'd want it to go to the covered bridge. So I'd say, have the pathway go down. So where the covered bridge is, so right there, and then go to the parking lot from there, because there's going to be a pathway from the covered bridge.
The thing is, though, is that this bridge is really, if you look at I don't think we have the
Master
master
plan.
plan, but this is really right on top of the interior pathway, so there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So this is the interior walking path for that circles everything, and there's not much room between that pathway and the lacrosse field that's
Mhm.
on the other side, that will be on the other side as well.
Right.
Right, and that's also a very long run from there to the,
Well, I'd say you'd make it as far as you could go, right? Kind of like the other one is, but
I guess my
I do
concern
like
is
it in
that
the
it doesn't get seen as being part of the playground.
And
In term-
funding is an issue, and you get an advantage going inside.
yeah. Yeah, I have no problem going inside. Yeah.
Adele, how do you feel?
I prefer having the path inside the park. I had originally thought the covered bridge was going to be inside the boundaries of the park, and that the path that the named bricks would go from the parking lot to that opening.
That's what I originally thought too, yeah.
Having the covered bridge outside the park then creates difficulty getting it to the front, and that's when it starts impinging on the lacrosse field. If the bridge were within the boundaries of the park, then it could be that part of the running path that's coming up and around,
Right.
and wouldn't impinge on the lacrosse field at all.
That's a good point, because now you can have a shorter internal path, or at least the brick part of it. You've bought yourself a few extra feet, so to speak, from the path.
It would still need to have a brick flooring. As I recall, did the old one have a brick flooring or dirt flooring?
Brick, yeah, it's set right on top. I'm sorry, Terrence Duffy from Weston Nurseries, do you have a?
I'm Terry Duffy, I work at Weston Nurseries, but in this case, I have much more experience in parks and that type of thing. So bridges are considered transitions, right, from one space to another space. And in this case, I can almost see that covered bridge being halfway between the old, then you have the fence, and then you're entering into that new space. And I think that'd be a much more effective way for you to convey the sense that you are leaving the lacrosse field and the sporting field and now entering into this new space. And then when you come in, once you enter, now you're already in it, you get that feeling of, boom, here I'm in it.
I agree.
Is there a reason why it's
Good
on the
idea.
outside of the fence?
So you're saying shift it a little bit from where it's shown here?
Yeah, do you mind if I walk up here?
Go for it.
Bill's walked about a mile going back and forth. So if this was halfway, move this up. So the halfway mark would be, you'd have a little bit on this side and a little bit on that side. Because you're transitioning, it's like going through a door to the other side, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to check with him. The only issue would be that it's gonna be next to that poured in place stuff, and I don't know if the runoff from the roof is gonna affect that. if it's gonna watershed onto the equipment, you know what I mean?
Such a small, square footage though, I don't think that that'd be an impact.
Okay. I'll
You
ask.
still should check it, I agree, but I don't think that's gonna be a big impact.
How do you guys feel about that?
I
Half and
prefer
half.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, I prefer it. Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what
How
what
big
did
is
the
that?
old one do? Was the old one half?
I'm sorry,
It
how big
was,
is
yeah.
that roof?
It's a 12 by 8 structure.
So you're only talking about a quarter of that though,
True.
okay, because only a quarter of it would go onto that
Right.
side.
Mhm.
So even in a 2-3 inch storm, you're only talking about, a couple hundred gallons of water.
And just to let you guys know too, I did reach out to the person who's expressed an interest in rebuilding that
Yes.
structure, and he's on a business trip. He can't come tonight, but he's going to catch up with us when he gets back.
Oh, great.
The only other issue I see is, was there a plan for one of the gates to be there at the end of the covered bridge?
Gates. There's only one gate, and that's the far
Yeah.
top left where they're.
Okay, so those
they're
are
not-
openings.
Everything's an opening because
Mhm.
gates, as I said, gates are the things that go first. No one's gonna close them behind them anyway, so they don't bother doing it. The DPW has expressed that with the moving parts that they fall apart first, and in terms of people being, oh, well, I wanted it to be gated off for my kids, no one's gonna guarantee that the last person out closes the gate anyway, so they not doing gates.
Mhm.
See, the park in Billerica, Children's Place, actually has kind of an airlock with double gates,
Yeah.
so that kids cannot leave the playground.
Yeah, that's, I think, been discussed to, I think
And
that,
decided that,
I think
we're
Steve
not.
has made it clear that they're not intending to do any gates other than the one at the top for
okay,
structures. I mean, that
For the
conversation,
lawnmowers, yeah.
that conversation's been had like a number of times at this
Okay.
point. So I think the time for that discussion is probably,
So the one question I do have though, so if we don't have enough bricks to go the whole length, right,
Whole
from the covered bridge to where the
old
current
one,
bricks are,
yeah.
do we continue from where the other old bricks are, or do we go from the covered bridge and try to, to meet in the
I know
middle?
what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Because it's like,
Right.
If we're-
You
if
either
we're
go with
making-
continuation or you go with new, not quite mating old, so
right, because if the covered bridge is gonna be the main entrance, and that's where we want everybody funneling in,
you kind of want to
that's
see
where we
it.
want the new bricks to be, right?
On the
Ideally,
inside
on
of
the
the
ins-
park,
on the
right.
inside, right, yeah, but not starting on the other entrance, because that's not technically gonna be the main entrance.
Or could you just, during that whole section, have non-marked bricks interlaced with the marked?
Yeah.
It just depends on cost. So I know Steve said he was, and Steve was invited to this meeting, just to make that clear, and I didn't get a response either way. He was costing out the internal pathway of the playground to be either concrete or crusher fines, and wanted to know basically how much we were gonna be able to afford. So we'll just have to work with them. It'll be kind of fluid until we get to April
Yeah.
30th when we really know. But
Yeah.
it sounds like what I'm hearing is that our preference, or the preference would be that we start at the covered bridge, try to get it moved halfway in if we can't, maybe have the connection to the walking path be the bricks, be the bricks that connect to the walking path, right? Because the walking path is going to be really close to
Mhm.
the covered bridge.
Yep.
And then go in as far as we can with the goal of connecting to the existing brick pathway.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I would be hesitant about putting engraved bricks within the bridge structure, only because they get covered with debris. I
It
seem
was
to.
like that before, though.
It was?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how, yeah.
Yeah, the covered bridge covered that part it was
Okay.
bricks right until the edge.
I'm misremembering then. I would rather see them interspersed with more blank brick,
Yeah.
so that it does stretch. Because one of the things that, yes, it's fun about the bricks in the old path, but they are very crowded together. And aesthetically, I don't enjoy that as much as if the engraved bricks were, at least had a frame of bricks around it.
Right.
I think we agree. I think we're just gonna figure out if we have enough money to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just not the
Yeah.
funds. Right.
If we can do it, then I would say that's number one. That would be like perfect world if we can do that.
Perfect world would be
If we can do bricks the whole way,
all the
and
way
then-
from the covered bridge to the existing pathway
Correct.
on the inside.
and then have the blanks to fill in the gaps where we don't have the sponsored bricks.
Right.
That would be perfect world. And if we can't do that, then I would say let's start the bricks where the covered bridge is, and we'll have them all together like the other ones are, and go as far as we can.
Right. And buy as many unengraved bricks as we can afford
As
with
we-
the funds that we raise from the engraved brick sale.
Yeah.
Plus, you got the savings because from the concrete that you're not gonna have there, right?
Right.
I don't know how much that is, maybe it's negligent, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what the cost of.
Yeah, I mean, in those if there's any substantial savings, those savings might go towards
Diggers.
signage, or might go towards diggers, or faux rocks, or whatever. You know.
And I'm just saying to help bridge that financial gap.
Right.
That coming down there.
Right.
Does anyone know what the cost of brick per square foot versus concrete per square foot is?
I don't know what concrete is, but brick is $10 per square foot, and I don't know what granite is either.
Granite or crusher fines?
Same. Yeah, crusher fines. Okay. Anybody else have any comments about engraved bricks and pathways? Okay. This is the update that I got from Steve, and I mentioned to him that our goal is to raise between $18,000 and $20,000 to build the brick walk, and like I said, he said that his cost experience with bricks is $10 per square foot. And he needs to know sooner rather than later. So we'll at least give him the goals that we have set for this, the idea, and we'll have to, the Friends of Roberts Field will have to vote to make sure that that's where they want the placement of it. But we can give that to him and he can start working the numbers on it, I guess. I also asked, there was a question about what's the plan for the Bittersweet? And the response that he gave me was that he plans on digging out anything within the playground area, and depending on how it goes, we can spray if need be prior to install. So it sounds like herbicides are still a possibility.
Probability. Probability.
The extent to which the clearing is gonna happen, I'm not completely sure about. Obviously inside the fenced area, and I think beyond that area as well, because the abutter plantings are gonna, the berm and the abutter plantings are gonna have to be cleared as well, because that area is overrun as well. But I'm not sure how far north and south, or west and east, I guess. I also asked Steve about one of the big considerations with wood fiber and having it being accessible is that it has to be maintained. So it really needs, the ruts really need to be raked out weekly at minimum, so that people can move through them, because the swings and such get rutted out and you can't go through them, and then anywhere around the things the wood fiber gets kicked out, and there's a lot of wood fiber in this plan. So
underneath the swings we are doing mats though, right? Wasn't that part of the plan?
What's that?
I don't know.
Not an important
I know we
place.
talked about mats, but I don't see.
Poured in place.
I don't
But
see.
now that you mention it, I haven't seen them.
I haven't seen mats in the plan. It was talked about, but it wasn't discussed.
Can we make sure that those are, because I think they were like $150 a piece or something. They're not huge expense, but
Yeah,
it was agreed that we were doing that
And he would.
because we weren't
want
doing
them.
port. Yes, because
Yes.
it decreases their maintenance costs.
Okay.
But definitely the plan had mats there and at the landings of slides.
Right, for the slides, for sure, I remember that. But I don't see them on the plans
Yeah,
that
can
they've
you
been
go
showing.
back for a second to the?
Because we originally had port in place, and we swapped the port
Yeah,
in place
where
out
we
with
said
the
no,
mats
we'll do
because-
mats.
Yeah.
So there's blue. No, there are mats.
Are those there?
There's blue squares underneath.
Or the
gray.
dark, yeah, the
Gray
dark.
squares, and there's gray squares at the bottom of the slides. I just
Oh,
not
that
all
must be it,
all
yeah.
6 slides. I mean all. Oh, maybe. Oh, you know what? The ones on the far right must be the little kids swing, so they don't put them underneath because the kids aren't dragging their feet because they're
Can't reach
toddlers.
the ground.
Yeah.
But they're still gonna need to be the areas are still gonna have to be raked out.
Right.
I mean, there's gonna be ruts just from kids running around and playing and stuff.
Right. Oh,
Like on
definitely.
Like on the bobble riders, right? There's gonna be ruts
Oh,
around
yeah,
that.
I would say everywhere else, I would just say that hopefully around the swings won't be as bad as,
So I asked specifically what the plan was, and this was the response. We plan on raking as needed Monday and Thursday or Friday to start. I'm assuming that means that they're gonna be raking at least weekly. It sounds like possibly twice or 3 times weekly, to see how it goes from there. Nick and I have discussed doing 2 smaller top-offs instead of 1 large one, meaning that in the past, they did 1 major top-off of wood fiber, and now they're saying that they may do 1 in the spring and 1 in the fall. What happens is that wood fiber just settles and it shrinks down, so they'll have to top that off and raise the height. And most of the equipment would be marked, so you'll know where the fiber level is. Probably spring and fall, 30 yards each. So that's what he said about that. The GFRC climbers are, if you look at that H structure, it's actually a climbing, manufactured climbing structure. Next to that is the GFRC climbing rocks. It's basically faux rocks. It's
glass
rock-
fiber reinforced concrete.
concrete rocks that look like rocks. The cost for those rocks is about $17,000. It's not in the budget. I hope that we can, as part of our discussion tonight, at least explore the idea of using actual wheel rocks for that. You didn't say it in this, but in a follow-up email to this that I copied you guys on, he said that he and Nick didn't want to use rocks, but didn't really say why.
That was my next question, right? So
Yeah.
what is the disadvantage to using real rocks versus the fake ones?
I understood the advantage being that they were sort of already, I think they would be easier to install because they're sort of at a set height, so you could easily kind of just pop them in and they'd be done, right? So it'd have 1 here, 1 here, 1 here.
Right.
Versus if you had just big boulders, you kind of have to use your kind of imagination to kind of make sure the placement works.
We'd have to find the right size boulders and that sort of thing, and yeah, so it's maybe more labor intensive.
But $17,000 will buy a lot of
Labor.
and a lot of bricks if we have to put some unmarked bricks in there.
Yeah,
I think it's also an injury issue.
Well, I was gonna say, is there a liability issue that if O'Brien's covers gives us GFRC rocks, then if there's a problem, we can go to them versus if it's a real rock and then you just have nature to blame? I don't know, like...
So I emailed Megan O'Brien about the use of rocks in natural playgrounds, and she sent us 2 documents. I shared them with you. You have them right now. About safety standards and all that stuff, and there was nothing in these about the use of rocks or natural stuff like that. They had a lot of stuff about the types of woods that could be used, right? But nothing about rocks, only that anything that you use like that would have to have the same fall safe considerations as
the fall
pre-manufactured stuff, right? So if it's a 1 foot high rock, you would need a 18-inch fall zone for it. So as long as the fall zone standards are met, I didn't find anything in any, and I've done some research on line to try to find if there's anything that said you couldn't use natural stuff like that, and I couldn't find anything. The only consideration was that it had to have a fall zone, and it's currently in an area that obviously has a fall zone now. Fits with the natural theme, but we can maybe talk about that after we talk about more of the natural playground that Terry's going to cover off on later. One last update that I gave, and I want to give you guys, I went and took some pictures today, was, we had tree damage. We had the Bradford Pear that we were sort of discussing whether it should come down or not before, and Mother Nature sort of made that decision for us. That's the smaller Bradford Pear that's out by the playground. That's Jim and I are kind of on different sides of this fence, but I feel like it's kind of a done deal I don't know how you guys feel about it. Elizabeth, I know you took pictures and saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a beautiful tree like it once was. It's definitely a shell of its former self. I kind of felt like it gave itself for the park in the last storm. I mean, I could see keeping it if people were desperate to keep it, but I don't think that it's going to be I don't know enough about trees. I think it'd be a long time before it looked like a tree and not like a...
2 or 3 years. It'll bounce back. It's gonna grow like a bandit. It's got that great big root system now, and all the growth that would have taken place spread over the existing canopies now. But again, whether you folks want to take the heat for people looking at that at the grand opening, and
Yeah, it just lost a lot of limbs.
but it is gonna survive.
Is that the picture right there?
No, this is a different one. So, because you guys talked about that one at the last meeting, I didn't want to.
I thought we'd already voted
Yeah,
on it.
I thought
Maybe
it was
it's
kind of
like-
over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so that one, but then, that, and I referenced that because he says, obviously the pear tree at the playground is coming down, right? So
Yeah.
that's the pear tree. But I'd like to take one down near the parks garage. So there's 2 lindens, little leaf lindens, behind engine 3 and next to the parks garage. And I went out there today and took a picture of it. I don't know if you remember, there was one tree that had a chain around it that was put on it to hold one of the major branches up before, and that's the one that's the branch to the right that's hanging over on top of the picnic table. I'm not an arborist, I don't know. I'd ask Jim to take a look at it and see, but to me it looks like there's still a substantial part of that tree
Yeah,
that's
it's gonna
still
survive.
in good shape and that could be saved. It's a beautiful tree, and I'd like to see it preserved personally, if we could.
What's the reasoning behind taking it down? Is there another, other than the limb broke, is there another thought process around it? So it looks like
It seems to be
survived
town
well,
policy.
The other one is pretty much lost, so.
If it's damaged, take it down. They spend very little time on pruning. It seems to be most of their budget goes for takedowns.
I mean, if you take that broken limb off, it's not gonna look awkward, I don't think.
No, I mean, you can see the
big
tree
I mean,
canopy.
a
There's
good
still,
portion of
yeah.
the trunk came off, right? Is that...
Terry, did you have a?
Sure, so Terry Duffy again, that's 2 lindens, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, so the one on the left is definitely damaged, and I don't know this gentleman, Jim, but he's right, it will come back eventually. But then what is the aesthetic you're trying to put there? If I remember right, there's a bench in between there.
There's a picnic
There's a-
table.
Picnic table, yeah.
Yeah, so the 2 trees are there to frame the bench. So if you're trying to still keep that aesthetic, then they should just live it up and let the thing come back. If you don't care about framing it, take the one on the left down and let that other one get even bigger. I mean, the canopy on it would be stunning. Right now, the canopy on the plant on the right, the canopy is not quite off to the left because the other one is shady. So it's really what the aesthetic is you're trying to accomplish there.
Okay, you've got another issue there. The tree to the right is not in as good condition as this one here. Actually, this is the healthier one. You take a look at the tips of the branches,
Yeah.
you notice how it is. It's,
Yeah. Again,
I
I'm only
rated
going by
this one is fair and this one is
I'm only
good.
going by the photo. It's been
Yeah.
about a year or so, or 2
Right.
years before since I've seen that.
It's a good perspective. I
But the
appreciate that.
point is, what are you trying to accomplish with having the 2 things there? Like, what's your aesthetic? What's the emotion you were trying to accomplish there?
Okay.
Were we just naturalizing and taking advantage of the 2 trees being there to put the picnic bench in shade? I think that was it.
Yeah, yeah. So I agree. You probably should have an arborist look at it. I know plenty of people that can help you out looking at it, but you have to decide what you want to accomplish as far as the scenery and the emotion that you have.
Okay. Good perspective. Thank you. Do you guys have any perspective on, I mean, do you feel committed one way or the other about cutting it down?
I'd rather keep it if we can. I mean,
If it doesn't pose a risk, I wouldn't, I'm not sure the point of cutting it down. If it poses some grave risk that we can't handle a different way, then I would say you have to do something, but there's still a lot of tree there.
Yeah, I would just take the fallen limb and the one off to the left that's lower to kind of balance the tree a little bit, and I don't see the point.
The higher one off to the left, if you took that off, might I don't know, that would balance the tree more so that it could spread out, and eventually the two would balance out. I don't know enough about it, but.
David?
Yeah, I seem to recall over last autumn there was something weird going on with the foliage in one of those trees. And I don't know if it was indicative of the health of the tree or this different nature of each tree, but I remember something weird going on, so I'm not sure if this is just another. It's funny
you say, because the one on the right was the one that didn't leaf out, that looked sickly, sort of, the one that wasn't damaged, right? But the one that had the chain was the one that was full and all leafy this past year.
Yeah.
I mean, really what happened, I think, is that the big major branch that fell over was one that was chained to keep it up, because it split years ago. So the guy that used to work in the DPW garage added the chain to keep the branch up because it split. And then what happened is the chain grew into the tree, and then it sort of cut off the branch on the left that fell off at that chain break. And then once the chain gave way, the other branch fell off. So
They actually weakened it by putting the chain on it.
right, yeah. But it was the one that broke was the healthier of the two, which is unfortunate.
That's the way it goes.
So what I'm hearing is that we would recommend that the tree be that the dead stuff be cut back, and that we try to maintain and save the tree if possible.
Yeah, I think they'd have to come back with a reason.
Okay, I'll pass that along.
Yeah, just don't see any point to cutting it down when less time can be spent pruning it and letting it be.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments on? Okay, seeing none. So,
we have a conspiracy going, but.
We're asking how much of that we could do ourselves.
Well, hopefully we can have a volunteer project to go out and cut away the stuff that's broken this week. I was going to check with you, Barry, to see when you would be available.
I can't.
Our following
I
week,
can't
maybe.
this week, but next week.
The following week, maybe it would be better.
The weather's been so on and off that.
Yeah. It's supposed to snow on Friday, so we're
What?
going to have to wait.
Are you kidding?
No, it's supposed
Welcome
to
to
snow.
New England.
This was last week.
No, it's supposed to snow. So the big chunk of our meeting is going to be talking about the natural play area design, and Weston Nurseries has agreed to put together the concept plan, and Terry Duffy is here today, and he's given us a lot of great information that we'll hopefully share with us. Where would you like to start? I know you sent me some other presentations.
Whatever you want to do is good with me.
So this is the concept plan with a few additions that we added. You guys talked about this last time, and I just added a couple of the graphics from some of the other slides that included. On the far right are the impressions that the animal track impressions that you can buy for about $150. So from a volunteer standpoint, we could do stamping for tactile animal prints. The sign that John worked on, the concept sign for the natural play area, is on the top right. The little placard and then the things underneath it are the graphics that we had included in the master plan discussion of the what do you call it? The scavenger hunt, the nature scavenger hunt. So that would have some kind of a little plaque that would, on the sign, would send people out into the park to find these different things and some sort of education. And then the other things are things that that Terry had included in the original concept plan. And you'll get into more detail on.
Yep. Okay, so do you have that PDF of that inspiration thing that I had?
Yes, I do.
So I actually did this little thing prior to when Bill first asked me about this, a couple months ago, whatever. And not that everything's going to be exactly these things, but these are the kind of things, when I'm trying to make suggestions, these are the kind of things that are in my mind, right? So this whole thing about setting the emotion, so obviously you're not gonna do a path exactly like this, but the concept would be that if you had a path and you're trying to make it in a sensory area, so you wanna try to touch all the different senses, and you can start right away by whatever the path is. So you can change and have different types of, you can have a gravel thing, which has a different feel and sound to it. You can have larger rocks where it's a little harder to walk. You can have something very soft, like in the picture on the left there, you know, turf or, I don't know, something. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. And then
That's
I'm also thinking, you can make this really cool, you know. You can take an old theme, so these kind of shapes and things are an old theme, and kind of put a new spin on it, you know. And then the one that's on the bottom right there, that's the same idea of using different types of path material, different materials there, to give a different feel and a different sound for anybody. It doesn't just have to be children, although we're trying to direct it to children, so we're scaling things down a little bit. But an adult can walk through there and feel the different things and hear the different things, right? Either no sound on those very flat pieces, or the wood, you'll hear the echo off the wood, or if they decide to go over on the larger rocks, it's a little harder to walk, but you're still able to walk there, right? Okay, go ahead. And then sound, you don't have to do just a plant like that is wisping in the wind, like a grass or something like that. You can add other elements in it, so there's kind of all different kinds of wind chimes or wooden things that are gonna make sound. And then you can, on the bottom right, you can actually install things in there that they can go and hit and actually hear the sound, you know, some sort of percussion type of thing. So, go ahead. Sight, I mean, the bottom right, all right, you're probably not gonna do that, but the idea is to try to give them something very, I know you said before you don't like primary colors.
Well, no, it's not that I don't like. No, let me be clear. If it's a natural primary colors, that's cool.
Yeah.
If it's neon paint, that might not be
Right.
in keeping with.
But anyway, you can bring this sight element in, when it doesn't have to be specifically just in one spot, you can add it in to the rest of the garden, okay? And so this is the kind of thing I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about what can you do in this small space to try to get these different sensory things. Go ahead, Bill.
They all look really cool, and I have nothing against color. Just make it clear.
I'm only teasing you. So touch is a very easy thing as far as plant material goes. I'm sorry.
We'll just take all of it. Do we have to choose?
No, we're gonna have it all. We're gonna have it all. So the touch element and the scent element, those are easy things to do in the plant world, okay? There's tons of them. I sent you this little thing. I don't know if you sent it to everybody. There's a couple here.
I didn't, but I had to have that on a presentation too, so.
Okay, yeah, so there's a couple there.
And so, just so people,
You guys can share a couple.
for people watching at home, this information and this information that Terry's handing out is available at robertsfield.org on the home page under the meeting documents
So
section.
the first, I'll go back to the first page, but the second and third pages, there's a lot of different things that you can do for touch and scent. Okay, those are very easily covered. There's tons of material you can use for that, and they don't take up much room. Okay, so in the top left-hand corner, there's a sample of lamb's ears. Almost everybody has seen them before. They're very, very soft, and they actually have a little bit of a scent. The bottom right, you're probably not going to put a big succulent in there, but the moss that's underneath it, you could. You know what I mean? And then the top right is another lamb's ears thing. Okay, done. Taste is a little harder to do. Normally, we try to use some sort of mint, you know, something that's got quite a fragrant. So they'll have the scent anyway, but they can still eat it. The one here with the little girl has got a bean. I don't know if you have room for enough beans, but there always could be something. You can
Yes.
put-
A question:
Yeah.
if you're encouraging taste in one part, but other parts are
it'll be-
not,
Exactly.
No, so everything would be so they could taste it. I get to that. I'll come back to. I'll circle back. to that.
because I have very small kids who like to eat
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that are inappropriate at
Yeah,
this time.
let me hold on to that. I'm going to come back around to that.
Okay.
So go ahead. Scent. You know, there's a lot of different kinds of scents, right? So even a sunflower, which we don't normally think of as scent, if you really get in there, you can smell it. You know, and a kid might just do that anyway, or an adult. I've done that myself. I've worn them on my head. But scent is another easy one to kind of get to. Go ahead. Is that it? Yeah,
That's it.
Okay. So now circling back around, I'm going to answer your question first. So that's the idea. Everything that's used in there would be, there'd be no chemicals on it whatsoever. So everything would be totally organic. And it would be organics that even if somebody ate them, you know, wouldn't be a problem.
Non-poisonous.
Or just even tasted them. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Okay? So that's kind of the whole concept. So I'll start with the beginning there. The pathways, I talked kind of about them already, and you can widen them and you can keep them together and you can come up with a lot of different things. Hand prints, leaf prints, you were talking about this thing with the
Footprints.
different animals and stuff like that. That's a great idea. Go ahead. So, go ahead.
I did have a question. One of the main things in terms of the park is accessibility.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a pathway with different textures,
Yeah.
then that's going to affect the accessibility for rolling.
So that image that I showed, that's what I was getting at. It doesn't
Okay.
necessarily have to be that. You could still have that, as far as the pathway goes, but, you know, wheelchair is gonna be, you still want them to feel a little bit of this kind of thing. So you would
Right.
just make it so that it's all ADA, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, that's without question.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And even the, you know, I mean, I'm getting down to really brass tacks, but this is where I'm thinking. Even a wooden slat walkway, if you have the, you know, the correct gap in between it, when they're rolling over it, they feel that little
Right.
bit of a bump, okay? And then when you have some rocks where it's kind of going like this, you still have that.
Okay.
So you have between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch, that's considered ADA, one
Okay.
of these types of things, so plenty of room for them to actually feel something.
Excellent.
Totally smooth is boring. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Yeah. Okay, so keyhole garden, so that little thing that I sent you as sort of a concept, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Where you would have some sort of a pathway, and then you're leading them to something where there's a little tiny section for each sense. And that's what the keyhole garden kind of concept is, okay? Rather than a whole big, huge thing that's just one thing. We're
Overwhelming.
separating them out, yeah, okay? And then sensory plantings, I kind of went through that already as far as all the different senses, okay? But there's 2 other senses, right? So we hit the 5 that everybody knows, but there's actually 2 others that aren't really brought out that much. And the first one, I always have trouble pronouncing this.
Proprioceptive.
That's it.
Proprioceptive, yeah.
Oh,
Proprioceptive.
she got it. She got it, exactly right. You sound just like Google. Anyway, so that is your relative position on the planet. So if you are, you know, up against a wall, you feel one way. If you're laying down on the floor, you feel a totally different way. And you're already doing that in most of the rest of the garden, so, you know, the rest of the park. So I don't even think you need to address that particular one, because it's already happening between the playground and, you know, all those other things. And then did you look at the second word? You got that?
Vestibular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my son, so
Okay, all right.
my kid.
Right. And so what's a good example of that?
Sense of balance.
That's right, balance, exactly right. So this whole thing about balance, and this comes in the pathways, but it also comes in other areas that you're already addressing. So in essence, the rest of the park is already, you know, kind of ingrained in these sensory things.
Right.
I think it's very important to make sure that people understand that, even though we're kind of putting it in a small area, this 5 senses thing, the other senses are already being affected by these two also. Yeah. So if you look at the sheet, I kind of talk about, you know, some specifics about lamb's ears, I already mentioned as far as touch goes, artemisia, different types of fountain grasses. So those are shorter grasses that would have one kind of field grow during the summer, and then during the fall they plume, and then they have a totally different field. They have that plume at the top of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's different mosses, spongy kind of thing. There's things that are papery, okay, like the Chinese lantern plants, something like that. There's fleshy. Now here's a situation where I would not use succulents unless there's an aloe, something that was, you know, soft. And they could taste it if they wanted. They're going to hate the taste, but they could if they wanted to. Right? Waxy, bristly, echinacea type heads. playfill snapdragons, those are awesome. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, where you're just going along snapping them, it's great. And then reactive. So some of the reactive things are actually temperate plants, so you would have to replace them every year. You could leave them out there every year, but they're pretty small, and if you wanted to keep one little patch of them, somebody could go and just replant them, you know, once a year. But you just, I'm sure you've already seen this. You touch them, they close right up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Site, there's tons of them. Allium are great. One thing I used in another Century Garden was these huge elephant ear plants. You ever see these things?
Oh, yes.
So the foliage is massive, like this big. Plant gets about this big. Everybody goes to see them. They just can't believe that this sort of, you know, prehistoric plant, almost type of thing. And then giant sunflowers. Who doesn't love sunflowers? And then other things you can do, you can hang rainbow ribbons, these little kind of whirligig type of things that have motion to them anytime wind comes through. The stakes I already showed you, and all that. One thing that I didn't really talk about too much is the elevation of whatever these plants are going to be. So one problem that I've run into, all the plants are in the ground, everything looks great. The kids don't go down to the ground and touch them because they've been taught at home, don't touch the plants. So sometimes it's better to raise a few and to lower a few, if you can. That encourages them to actually reach out and touch them. Also little signage that says, please touch me, or, you know, please smell me, or something like that, to encourage.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then you can see all the different taste things I have on there. Some of them, it kind of crosses over between scent and taste.
I have, it's going to sound weird to everybody else, but we have a couple of resident bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I saw your thing about bird feeders, the first thing I thought of was our resident huge brown bear.
Yeah.
So when we do this
problem
kind
during the winter.
yeah, but we want these things to grow during the summer. How do we make sure it's also
Don't
not
put the
attractive?
birdseed in them.
Yeah.
Just have them there as decoration
Okay.
during that time of year, yeah. Yeah.
And what about the other things that grow, or is that anything that's?
So bears won't be attracted to most of the things that I have
Okay.
listed here anyway. Again, this is just like a big, huge thing. We're gonna narrow it way down.
Right.
But that's something that we'll wanna, you know, keep in mind, yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things that came up with this too is the maintenance part of it. So I know you'd mentioned some of the plants we might have to, if we want to choose them, we'd have to be replanted, that sort of thing. So
So it's a limited palette right now. So far, what I have here, the only thing would be that sensory plant.
okay.
So it's almost like a house plant. So I would just only have it in one little tiny spot. And I'd probably have it raised up, maybe in a pot or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
If you
So they
kept it in a
actually
pot,
touch it.
then someone might take it home on the.
Well, no, we would.
No, I
have
mean,
it
I mean, like, it would be fine to take out in the winter.
yeah, you could if you wanted to, yeah, absolutely. But especially if it's like sticking up a little bit, they'll reach down and touch it. And then that's all my friends that reach down.
So,
But even then, they're inexpensive, you know, so even if nobody took it home and took care of it, just replant it each year. But most of the, Bill had mentioned it before, the DPW, and I've worked with them before, they really want to make sure that they don't have a lot of maintenance.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that
so
would all be built in. Sorry, Bill.
what was I say? Would you say that most of the stuff that you've defined in this broad swath is pretty low maintenance?
Yes.
Okay. And the maintenance would look like what? Like probably a fall cleaning and a spring cleaning?
Spring cleaning would be from other debris coming around from it, but essentially, yeah. The only thing, so in the construction, that's gonna be the key. So something like mint is gonna run all over the place unless we contain it.
Right.
So we just set it up so that it's contained right from the get-go, and it reaches its limit, and then it doesn't go past that.
Okay. Longer term considerations. The irrigation system hasn't or won't be put in until the fields are redone, right?
Yeah.
Which will probably be a year or two down the road. Would it be best, or is it just necessary for us to even, Are these plants gonna grow if we don't have an
Yeah,
irrigation system?
That'll be a consideration, you may wanna phase that. Some things will wanna have more irrigation than others. You know, some of the grasses and things like that, once they're established, they're good to go, but, you know, some of these other things, you know, especially on this slide right here, they'll want some irrigation, so you could just leave the space for them and do it at a later time.
Is there anything that
You
we-
were talking
sorry.
about coming in and watering
Yes,
some.
is there a water truck in town? Some towns have a water truck that goes around and waters all the baskets hanging around town early in the morning.
I don't know.
Is there any kind of vehicle that could get in there? I was just gonna bring in gallon milk jugs.
I was gonna say, how much water are we talking about to
Yeah.
water?
I'd have to, I mean, it's a pretty small space, we're not talking a lot,
Right.
but, you know, it's kind of a far walk, especially when there's no brick walkway yet.
I don't know, I know. But when you plant them, could you put something in there to retain the moisture and the
It'll
dirt?
help, yeah, it'll help, but, it doesn't take the place of some water.
Oh, no, you're gonna need it definitely.
Yeah.
And
Get some of those
trimming back too,
bulb
so-
things that hold the water.
Your rain
Try some
barrel?
of those. Mhm.
Yeah.
Actually,
And
if-
that- I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you take a milk jug and you cut out the bottom and you
Yeah.
turn it around,
Mhm.
you can actually do an irrigation thing that way.
Yeah.
Water bottles the same way.
And there's-
too.
Yeah.
But there's prettier
Yeah.
things
Right,
that,
so here's what I was gonna say, so that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to take your idea a step further. Have rain barrels been successfully used in something like this? Can they collect?
So there's, except for the, there's no roof, you know, except for the little, covered bridge.
We have
we
a shade
could,
structure.
we could put a rain
It's not-
barrel by the
Yeah.
board in place and therefore take care of any runoff
So
from
one
that.
place that I did a project before, they had kind of a similar issue, and what they did was they took 5-gallon buckets, you know, like from Home Depot, one of those, you know, and they poked holes in it. But then the kids all painted them up, and so it became another element that was in there.
Yeah.
It's not that as good as a buddy bench, but, you know, it could be something for short term
Yeah.
anyway, you know.
Yeah.
But are you gonna get mosquitoes if it's standing water for a while?
I'm sorry, I missed
Are
that.
you gonna get mosquitoes if you're standing water for a while?
I don't think you're gonna have any standing water up there.
Okay,
Yeah, you mean, okay, you mean in
Yes.
the barrels, in the
Yes.
buckets.
yes,
They put the covers on them.
okay,
Yeah. So they would fill them and then cover it.
okay.
And that's kind of the same deal that happens with the rain barrels.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was
You
gonna
have
say,
the
how does that
covers, you
work?
don't have it anyway,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you think the shade structure roof is large enough to generate any kind of, no, it's not
You're
big
not
enough?
gonna get much off of
Yeah,
it, yeah.
okay.
So look at it this way, where the rain barrels are like 55 gallons, somewhere in there. You need 1,000 square feet, 1 inch of rain to produce 600 gallons.
It's too much math.
A week.
Well, 1 inch of rain, that's a pretty good storm, you
Okay.
know. Boston area averages about between 44 and 46 inches, except for this year. 44 and 46 inches of precipitation, that includes snow, per year. So, you know, when you really need it, you're not getting the rain, you know, during the summer months. It's only during the spring. So unless you have a way to really contain them, you'd have to have a series of the barrels or something like that.
Right, okay.
So anyway, just going back, I probably would recommend phasing it,
Okay,
you know. You could definitely define the area and have some of the stuff there, without killing this poor lady up with the 1-gallon jugs.
Are we even gonna be able to get irrigation into the center of the park with, they're gonna have to tear out?
so Steve,
Or underneath the sidewalk.
Yeah,
no,
would
Yeah,
have
that's-
to, the infrastructure would have to be there ahead of time, yeah, 100%.
Well, if they're small, well,
Steve has said that he's gonna put the, what do they call them?
sleeves,
No, whatever, the lines,
Chaser,
the lines in,
yeah,
when this is done, and then
Okay.
connect to it afterwards.
yeah.
So it'll be there, just ready to hook up.
Yeah, we call them chasers, they drop all the lines down ahead of time, but there's no connections on either end.
Right.
Right. So it's underground piping you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
For the irrigation system.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit different topic, but, so all the greenery, right, is all gonna be newly, what do they call it when they spray the seeds, the
Hydroseed.
hydroseeded?
Yeah.
Without any irrigation, is that gonna be,
That's gonna be a problem also. That's why that was on my list right here, things they ask you. Cause you and I had discussed that before about the hydroseeding. It's still the best way to do a huge area like this.
right,
Cause you can mix up the grasses, but without that irrigation to at least get it established, even the most hardy grass is it's gonna be a problem.
He's gonna have to run hoses and sprinklers in. I mean, you gotta have to water it somehow. I mean,
You have to understand that the water is all the way across over in the building behind the fire station.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a long hose. But once you build up the
Well,
pressure, it's
Pond, if you pump it from there. if you-
Yeah, well, I don't think the
Pressure.
pond has got much
Not much
to
of-
give.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Grasses. It has grasses to give. I said it has more grasses to give than water.
I want to say I remember him mentioning something about running
Hoses,
yeah,
right.
running hoses for that to get the grass to grow. I think that, but I mean, we can ask him.
So yeah,
Pretty sure
you'll wanna have that figured out ahead of time, because you have, so many square feet, and then you have so many
Yeah.
PSI at the start, but then it loses PSI by the time you get to the end, and so what are those sprinklers gonna actually cover?
But if we
Or
did,
the
if we
fire
had that,
truck from the firehouse
You have
there.
fire trucks.
You do have fire trucks right there with a pump.
And we used to take the fire truck up anytime we did a small park like this, and the fire trucks would water.
oh,
It's not like we're far from the fire station.
I know.
And the
I
pumps.
think I hit it the first time I was there with Bill. Like 3 years ago.
they have good water pressure, I can attest to that. Are we all in agreement that the area should be confined to that area inside the path around the shade structure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. I think
yeah, I
that
think
would
they'll be
agree on that.
perfect.
And that still allows, if the fence gets moved on the top part to where you guys had talked about last time, that still allows a nice big green open space for kids to run.
Right.
Mhm.
If we were able to use real rocks, it might make sense to flip the location of the climbing structure, double wave climber, and the climbing rocks to the other side, so that way you'd have natural rocks adjacent to the open field, right? And then also sort of adjacent to, you could tie those into the natural play area as well,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that, Adele, you have a puzzled look on your face?
Yeah, because I'm not following which areas you're talking about.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So right now, the faux rocks are all right here,
Okay,
and then this is that double wave climber.
Okay.
Right? So what I'm suggesting is, and this is the area that would be the natural play area, all the different things we talked about. If we shifted this over here and this over here, then you'd have the natural stuff, if it were rocks, you'd have the natural rocks here, tied into the natural area here, tied into the grassy open area here for tag and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it'd be kind of a consistency versus now, it's, I mean, it's not that big a deal, but it's kind of splits up if they were natural, if we're successful in getting it done, if that's what you guys want to do.
well, I thought that whole area surrounded by the pathway was going to be the sensory garden, or is the sensory garden just a portion of that?
My understanding was that the natural play area would be a combination of a lot of different things. So pathway, sensory garden, maybe not the butterfly garden. Maybe the sensory garden is sort of just uses plants that are butterfly friendly. Yeah, so that, I think we
Okay.
agree.
Yeah, so you'll want to define that, because, depending on I haven't dropped down anything as an actual plan, because we're still kind of back and forth about this, right?
Right.
But you'll want to decide on that, and that'll give you, how much sensory you can actually have.
Can you go to the slide that has the has the path and the tree, like the preliminary one? Where's that? Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because that's what we were thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
so
that's,
Yeah.
This one I did, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or something?
Yeah.
yeah.
And this kind of included, this I included some of the rock features, but if you're gonna move that, to a different site, or a different spot here,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be a little bit different. Right now, technically, this is the zone that I would have the sensory in, except for whatever pathway would happen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little pathway here, and I just indicated it with this, but what I'm really intending is this thing. that I
Combination
showed you,
pathway
different
thing. Yeah.
tactile things, right?
Okay.
To kind of bring them around, but here's where when Bill and I were talking, this is where I was kind of talking about the rock thing, but if you're gonna move that somewhere else, you can make this zone a little bit bigger. This was a shade structure or something, right?
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
still there.
So that's another sense, you'll wanna keep that,
Oh,
whatever
yes.
shape that takes on. You'll wanna, whether it's right there or not, but you'll wanna keep that, because that's another sense.
Mhm.
That, you know, they're out in the sun, they're burning, and then they come in the shade.
Yeah, I think
Or a
that's
day like today, they don't wanna be there, they wanna be out in the sun, you know what I mean, so.
right. I think that's official. That's part of the.
That's-
that-
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's
that's part of
definitely
it.
being built there.
And I think the rocks going where you had it on the side where the climber is makes more sense because it's climbing and it all ties in with the fall zone and all that stuff.
I think you have a fall zone kind of issue if you flip them based on, I think the fall zone that they were using kind of works with the edge of the fall zone that goes with the zip cruise, the way they had it on the other
Oh, maybe.
thing.
Yeah.
So
It's all relevant.
What, yeah, I mean, there's a green area between it, though. I don't,
not on
No,
not
not
on
the
the
last
real
one.
plan, not on the other plan that we've.
oh, it's all connected?
Yeah,
on
it's
the
all
Yeah,
other?
it's all
connected,
connected.
yeah.
On this one, obviously it's not, but on the other one, it's all connected, so I don't know how they're actually intending to do it, since that's not actually in the current plan. So that may be how they're currently planning on building it, with the other one being how they would if they had money for faux rocks. But, are those trees that, the three,
Yeah, I was gonna.
These here?
no, those three there?
Right here? No,
Yeah.
large shrubs,
Okay.
large shrubs. So
Like
this zone
5
right here
feet
is the
or 4
butterfly
feet or
garden.
like,
Now, this zone right here would be the butterfly garden, and that's a totally different animal that you have to really mass a lot of big plants, and, well, you need to have a couple of bigger plants to give them cover. You know,
Right.
they want no breeze, no wind, okay? If it's too windy, they won't go there.
right,
But then you can see it looks like a lot of circles there, because you need to have host plants. So that's when they're caterpillars, they start eating up all the host plants. And then they become butterflies, and you need to have nectar plants. And they all have to be within the same sort of zone.
right.
And so that's why this is, you know, heavily planted, but it's not really a lot of plants once you come down to it, because they eat half the plants down.
So is it, I think when we were talking about it, when we were, the meeting that we were in the other room, I don't know if you
Yeah.
watched us on video. So we kind of thought those were trees, then we're talking about
Yeah.
because there was the line of sight thing that had been
Yeah,
talking about from the
so
swings.
that's gonna be something I'll have to, you know, once we decide that's where it's gonna be, you know, wherever it's gonna be, I'll start
Yeah.
doing some drawings to figure that out.
I guess
often-
how dense is the plantage?
That's what
Can
I'm
you,
getting at. So often these three things, they're elevated up and you're able to see underneath them because the foliage is up above. But then typically, you know, you wanna stop any wind. So typically, the plants just underneath them are gonna be, you know, up to wherever that foliage is.
right.
You know, if you need to have that zone, I'm gonna have to rethink that.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. It's almost creating a wall, right? In a sense, where because you don't want the wind coming in.
Well, that's why I made it this way, where that would minimize your.
It's probably not the worst place to have a wall.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so it's linear, you know, you would still have, you know, sight lines this way,
Mhm.
and you would have them through them, of course, this way. It would just be at certain angles, you know, coming from this way, that you might not be able to see on this side.
We probably want to encourage kids to run towards the open field area too, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So do you guys want to scrap the butterfly garden idea? I mean, it sounds like it's going to be drawn in, drawn in
No.
insects.
So hold on, so wait a minute, before you, don't scrap it totally. But this is another consideration, right? So when Bill and I were talking, we were trying to stay within the zone, right? That's the idea. If you decided to move it and you really wanted to have it, you would put it at the edge,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So then it's okay if it's, you don't see the shrubs that are behind here.
Yeah.
So you would put it at some edge, you know, where that's what you want. You want to create a
wall.
delineation anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might be a consideration.
Does it draw a lot of other insects?
Not really, not really. Some of the
I
flowers
certainly
will
don't want to get
draw-
rid of it.
some
I
of
think
the-
it's a great
especially if
idea.
there's honeybees in the area. I don't know if there are, that may could help us out. You guys have honeybees up in that area, do you know? Not really? Okay. So if there's a lot of honeybees, because there's somebody right near Weston, you know, we're on the end of Pine Hill Road, right? During the late summer, we get tons of honeybees there.
Yeah.
When all the hydrangeas are going, all that kind of thing. They're not biting anybody, they're just there,
Yeah.
right? So you'll get that, and if that's the case, you definitely wanna have something on the edge. If you don't really have the honeybees, you're not gonna really draw a lot of, you know, wasps and things like that, due to this type of material.
I'm good
now
with
you-
it.
You were talking about the sensory garden being essentially in that lower round area?
Right here, yeah.
Okay. That big round area is also in the shade of a tree.
Yeah. So that's why it's right here, so.
Okay, it's over to the edge.
Yeah, so, this is north coming this way, so we're gonna be getting, plenty of sun in that zone. Besides that, some of these plants would like to have a little bit of a.
Shade.
Yeah, and if I remember right, that's a pretty good sized tree, so
Yeah.
it's not like it's such dense there. You're gonna get plenty of angled light,
Okay.
yeah.
Definitely.
But those
keep
are all
it in mind.
considerations, obviously. This is just a concept thing to try to get some conversation going,
This is wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a show, No, seriously though, this really, I've done a lot of public gardens, and a lot of parks and things like that, and this is when the park's always the best. When you have interested, community, and there's a lot of input and a lot of thought that goes through it, okay? I don't know if you know the Chelmsford garden right over here, they won a whole bunch of awards, right?
Right.
And the one that they won, to me, the one that was the best one, they won a national award, and it was a community award. Because there was a lot of this kind of stuff going on, a lot of input, a lot of changes all the time, and when it came out pretty nice, so.
It is nice. You guys did a great job on designing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but my point is, the community really made it happen. So this is a great way to go about it, yeah.
So are there any parts of this concept plan that we've talked about that anybody has any strong feelings for or against?
Only 4.
4. All 4.
Well, the only thing is, and I'm still spitting here thinking about the irrigation, because it seems like it's a complex problem, but it also, I don't know, it feels like it has a solution. I just don't know what it is. But it's like
I think there's going to be a lot of work
we've got to get water in there.
until the irrigation gets hooked up.
Yeah. I think
It's just going to take a lot of volunteer effort.
Plus, I think that you have a good point. We could phase it out, right? We
Yeah.
could put plants in there that are sensory, that are,
Less
Hardier.
inclined to draw up the water. So
Yes.
most plants are 65 to 75% water, when they're in the growing season.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, Jim.
I have a question. When's the best time to put in perennials?
Pretty much any time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so at one point, you only should do it in the fall or early spring because you were digging up perennials and dividing them.
Right.
But since the industry has changed to
Containers or
containers,
whatever. Yeah.
pretty much
Okay.
any time, yeah. But again, don't forget, they're grown in prime condition, they're at Western Nurseries at a prime condition, and they're well cared for. And then if they're well cared for, and then you drop them into dry ground with no irrigation,
Bingo.
it's gonna be a problem.
I have a,
Where is Western Nurseries?
So there's 2 locations. There's one right here in Chelmsford on Pine Hill Road.
Okay.
Yep. And that's the little tiny one. That's only a couple acres. There's a big one down in Hopkinton. It's 50 acres.
Okay.
So if you have a couple of days to travel around that nursery.
I love plants.
I have a question. Who's designing the irrigation system for this?
I would guess it'd be probably Steve, and then whoever the installer would be.
Yeah. So I've worked with Steve on a couple other projects,
Oh, okay.
and he's well qualified to take care of this.
Okay.
And really, we only have to do the hand watering or whatever for, 2 to 3 years until the remainder of the irrigation system gets connected?
On the high end, probably. I would hope that the fields would be done within 2 years.
Okay.
I guess it just depends on funding.
It strikes me that this may be a 2-phase project. In other words, put in low water demand materials and minimal plants, and then
Yeah.
come on with a phase 2 and fill it out with more
And
foliage.
flush it out once you have irrigation, yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I not only agree with it, I strongly recommend it. We talked before about the turf. The turf is a huge user of water too, especially when you're gonna have a lot of compaction from a lot of feet on it and things like that. You really need to, kick it up a notch. Speaking of which, so I have a couple notes if you don't mind. I'm gonna veer off a little bit. There's a couple of different types of turf. You and I talked about one for the parking lot area, kind of a wildflower thing.
Yes.
Probably
There's
between the upper and lower lot.
So, yeah, between the two spaces, because it's a sloped zone, you could do sort of a wildflower type of thing, and it actually comes as a seed. And they can put it through a hydroseeder. Still needs to be irrigated, but it works really, really well. But as far as the flat turf areas, we don't sell it. Weston doesn't sell it, but through the company called Sodco, S-O-D-C-O, there's a grass called micro clover, which was developed by the New York City Parks Department, and they have a lot of parks with a lot of grass. And it takes no fertilizer. It generates its own nutrients that it needs. It requires much less water once it's established, and it does stay shorter. The only trick to it is it has to be maintained. It has to be cut every week or every other week, something like that. Otherwise, the clover heads come to be. Okay. But you can look it up online. It looks stunning. I've used it in a couple of projects already. It really looks great.
How does it take traffic?
That's why they developed this.
Oh,
It
okay.
takes traffic awesome. Yeah.
And
that's kind of the
it's-
thing. Yeah.
And how high do they have to cut it?
So, at different times of the year, it doesn't grow tall anyway.
Okay.
It's not like traditional turf grasses. It
Mhm.
stays shorter anyway. So in the spring and fall, it would be a little lower. And then in the summer, you'd let it go a little bit taller, give a little bit of shade to the root system. But yeah.
Terry, say again, what happens if it doesn't get cut?
So
It
it's
grows
micro
clover heads.
clover, and the clover head will actually develop.
Okay.
And it'll bloom.
Yeah.
And
So if they let it go 2 or 3 weeks, you're gonna see these little clover heads all over.
So
so that means it
What-
looks bad, or?
I was gonna
that
say,
means it's a
what's wrong
permanent
with-
I think
problem?
it's just an aesthetic thing,
But
but
Just
they
more
cut
natural.
themselves that?
yeah. But you were making the point before about little kids. So
And
what
bee-
happens when you have clover? You're gonna get a ton of bees,
Bees,
and they're
yes.
at your feet, and that's
Yeah, okay.
kind of the thing. But anyway, it looks awesome.
And it's also soft, isn't it? Not like the
Very
Zoysia.
soft.
Yeah.
Very soft, yeah. Your thing about the brick walkway, I couldn't agree more that it should be inside, and I agree 100% with you. It should start at the bridge, wherever the bridge winds up. Especially if you're trying to encourage that that's your main walkway. Whether you get all the way to the end or not, it doesn't matter. I think just to start it there is a great thing. I can't remember what you said. Did Steve say he wants to use concrete?
I think he's,
I
yeah,
believe so, yeah.
Okay, on the walkway.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, okay, so that's okay. They just have to slope it to make sure anything comes off. He knows that already. But I can't remember who said something about having separate pieces of concrete with brick in it. And then somebody else said that could be a problem during the winters.
I was-
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, that is a
Yeah.
problem. So if you are gonna do these other little areas, they have to have drainage around them.
Mhm.
So if we have a brick walkway and then the concrete coming near
Abutting
it,
it.
we're gonna have to, they'll have to do that correctly.
Yeah, so normally you have the concrete, and then you're putting the bricks on top of them, and they actually attach it to it. And as long as they slope it, 2% slope, cross slope on there, Steve already knows this, I'm not teaching him anything, to allow the water to roll off. Otherwise, if it's not that way, the water starts sitting in there, and it comes down, and now it starts breaking up the concrete. The bricks stay fine, but the concrete starts coming apart, right? We've all seen that.
Yeah.
Your native invasive issue, so you can dig all you want, you gotta spray them, there's no way around it, okay? There are a couple of organic sprays, it's a citrus-based thing, it sort of works, but it takes a lot of them. But if they're gonna start using, the regular chemicals, they'll be able to get rid of them much faster for you. So, that's just something we have to suck up and.
So with that, if the plan is to dig it out and then bring in clean dirt, is that gonna work?
They would have to do a real good job of digging it. It'd have to be an excavator really grabbing it, not hand digging.
So if they sprayed, would the best practice be to spray first, let that set for how long, and then dig?
So it only has to be 7 days. They have to wait until it foliates out. It
Okay,
doesn't really work on the stem. It has to be the foliage.
okay,
So that's why it's a high sensitive area. If they're gonna dig anyway, just dig and bring in the fresh loam and good to go. But any of those exterior areas where they're not gonna really dig it up, just spray.
okay.
Yeah. I'm not really a big proponent of using chemicals, but there's just sometimes when.
Even with
we
a
got to.
park full of kids, right?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So once it's absorbed into the plant, as long as they're not eating the plant, it doesn't travel through the soil or anything, it only travels through the plant vascular system, so it's not gonna really impact any kids. You know,
It
these
doesn't
things like
stay in the
Roundup
soil
and
and
that kind of
stuff.
Huh?
It doesn't stay in the soil.
No,
No.
Okay.
it doesn't go in the soil at all, it only is through the plant vascular system.
Even within the plant, doesn't it break down within some period of time?
Yeah.
It's a salt, but it breaks down, yeah, but my point is, it doesn't go into the soil at all. Your question about the rocks, I would question why they're not using the natural rocks. Chelmsford's, one of Chelmsford's main businesses was granite. I live out in Rockport, guess what? We have granite everywhere.
We
You
have
know, it's
granite
different than what
underneath
you
the
guys
lawn.
have, But yeah, and we made a playground just like this, and it's got all regular rocks.
Do you have,
Kids fall off of it, and they just land in the thing, and that's it.
Where's that playground?
In Rockport,
Okay.
Rockport, Mass, yeah.
and if you got a sharp edge on something, I mean, it's just a matter
They
of
can-
hammering it down, right?
Yeah, they tool
We're
it
just
up.
choosing the right rock.
Well, not only that, but let's say, Bill, so that you have a rock, everything is great except for one edge, it's kind of sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just take a chisel and.
Or why buy the rock in the first place? Buy one that's got.
Well, you might get it for free too if you.
Yeah, I mean, if they've got some in a yard.
You know, so there's a couple of yards up in,
Yeah.
in North Chelmsford, you should go check them out.
Right.
You know.
I've got a couple that would be nice for climbing.
Oh,
The
donations.
goats liked it when
Yeah.
they were,
But if they have a good reason, I agree with you, if they have a good reason, maybe there is a good reason, I just don't know what it is.
It hasn't come across yet, but
And then you mentioned a pear tree, but you showed the other trees,
yeah, I didn't show the picture. The pear tree is actually, Jim, you
that's
wanna
okay,
point it?
that's okay.
This is a pear tree here.
Yeah, so the problem with pear trees is they're very soft, and you see what happens when we get the storm. So it's not, so a storm like this was this way, but the problem really is when the storm has wind that's swirling.
That was the pear tree.
trees- Yes, so that's actually not that bad, but the pear trees are not designed, or not built to actually take this twirling wind. That really screws them up.
Hmm.
So if you have something that's really compromised, it's almost better to get rid of that and put in something that's gonna be a little more stable for this swirling wind type of thing, you know? I love them, I think the canopy on them, and when they're flowering, they're just stunning, but, you know, they're kind of short-lived trees.
And there's a lot of, I think there's a great opportunity for us to add additional specimen trees into the plan down the road as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You could probably make some good recommendations for,
Yeah.
we could probably come up with some for
yeah,
that.
yeah, and there'll be some trees that are a little slower growing, but could take, you know, kids climbing on them and, you know,
That would be
stuff like
cool.
that.
Right. That's something that the park, the playground really doesn't have, is a climbing tree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be really nice to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, and kids do that, they love it.
Right.
And then the last thing, this wasn't here, but I noticed it one time before, they're having turf come right up to those trees on some of them. They really, and the problem is when they're using the weed whips to try to keep it clean, they're actually cutting into the cambium layer of the tree. So we need to push them back. Typically, I put some mulch coming out so that they don't bring the mowers and the trimmers right up to the tree. And it's not just your park, it's just about every park I go to. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, and it cuts down on their mowing time.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to phrase it, yeah.
There's the
Speaking of which,
diplomacy.
Does anybody know how wide those sidewalks are?
5 feet, I believe.
5 feet. They're gonna bring in a lawnmower that they need a 10 feet gate, a 10-foot gate for. How are you gonna move, I wonder how they're planning on moving it from the left-hand side to the right-hand side.
I think the width of the 10-foot gate is to facilitate the dump trucks for the,
The
The-
EWF.
yeah, for
The wood
the
fiber.
mulch.
They have to bring in,
No,
all
I
those
just was
of wood
wondering
fiber.
from a maintenance point of
But
view, how you're gonna get that lawnmower.
I think
Across
it's
the
a
thing
3
there.
or 4 feet.
Across what thing, Jim? I'm not following your question.
Get past the sensory yard and all that stuff.
You come in here,
Oh.
you've got this garden here, you've got this play area here, you've got this play area here, and you've got all this area over here to be mowed.
All right, so we'll have to end
So
up,
it depends on
Okay.
what size of lawnmower they're using.
so,
Yeah. So, way back, this is like last year sometime, I thought you told me they were gonna be 7 feet wide.
I heard 5 feet this week, so.
Okay, so, cause that price that I gave you for the brick thing was based on 7 feet.
Right.
So you would, make sure you recalculate that back out.
I want to circle back with you on those numbers because I can't find my numbers on those to make sure they match.
Okay. But his 10 feet per square foot with them doing the materials, that's right.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know what the distance is. That's what I was looking for him to give me, was the distance from the existing pathway to the bridge. I don't know how far that is.
Okay, so if you can't find that, we can meet out there. I have a roller, measure wheel. We can
Okay.
measure what it is.
Okay. But to Jim's point, we'll, as part of the expectations for developing the plan, we'll need to make sure that we have enough space through the middle of the natural play area to get the lawnmower to the other
Well,
side.
it's one of those little things that kind of gets you in the, I wish somebody had thought
So
about
they're
that
either
at the
48
beginning.
or 60 inches is the typical mower.
Okay.
But they've been using small mowers on the field, and it's been taking them forever, and then they got a new one.
We don't want that. We want them to be able to be efficient.
Well-
Because we want it done, right?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
I look at is what equipment do they have,
Or what are they planning to purchase?
or planning on purchasing?
Yeah.
And have they given any thought to this situation right here? I have another concern, as always. What are they gonna do underneath these trees as far as the lawn is concerned? Is Steve gonna come in and start digging up all that soil to get rid of the, bittersweet, or?
Yeah, so in sensitive areas, this is what I was getting at. In sensitive areas like that, it really should just get sprayed.
Well, we
Not
had talked about, having protective zones around these trees.
Yeah, yeah, so, and that's very typical, that's nothing unusual. You set up the zone around there and no machinery or anything's allowed in there.
Yeah.
Meaning not only just big machinery that they're driving, but
Well.
walking on, yeah? So you would actually have to stake it out, I'm sure you've seen it on.
Well, we've got it in the
projects.
plans.
That doesn't matter, you've gotta go out there and stake it out
Yeah,
and put a
that
fence up.
supposedly DPW is gonna go out and stake it, but then again, they said that the last time, and that didn't work out very
Yeah.
well, so
Yeah. And then you
I'm
put-
just a nervous Nelly, that's all,
I don't get that at all. And then you wanna put snow fence around it.
at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
Well, there
enforce
may
it.
be some leftover netting from Fenway you can use, because they
Yeah.
only went down to the first base side, third base side.
So,
so this is just a really rough swag, but it looks like it's about 100 feet on Google Maps measuring.
Yeah, so, Bill, I'm just looking at the communication we have. You said 150 feet by 7 feet.
Okay. So now it's going to be 100 feet by 5 feet,
Yeah, so, but at that price was around 20 grand.
right? That was the 18.
Yeah, it was like 18
So- So I don't know
And
how
that's where
far.
the 18. That's where the 18 to 20 goal came from.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
know
so-
how far down?
line, I think.
Does it go down substantially farther than that? I don't know what the line is.
I think the
Is the line down
walking
here?
path is like on top of the third baseline. I think
So-
it's around. I think
So like there?
there was difficulty fitting the covered bridge in that space between the walkway and the
So
playground.
does that look approximately? I mean,
You're talking like Google Earth or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I teach a lot too. And there's nothing like ground truth, right?
oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a
So
swag.
you gotta
and
mark out what you think it is, and then you gotta go out there and actually measure it.
my guess is somewhere to 100, 125 feet ish,
Yeah,
give
So
or
it'd
take
be-
50 feet.
So it'd be 100 feet times 5 times 10.
yeah,
So tolerancing.
plus the materials,
Okay.
right? And often in these things, it's the material, it's not
You
even
kinda
the
get an
brick.
idea, like that's
The brick is the least.
Right.
Right. So that's what.
So the
I'm trying
10 is
to-
the
This
is
line. It's
the
probably
installation.
Well,
So I'm trying to
it was
see
the
where the
brick
cut
plus
is. The
labor.
cut is
If
kind
what I
of
read from
right
Steve
in line with
is,
this
it
tree,
was
so
the
it might be
block
even.
brick
Might be a cut
plus his
down
labor
here.
to install it.
At 10. So if I have 100
Yeah.
times
It's
5
kinda
times
like
10,
that.
that'll give me a
It's
cost
kinda-
estimate for that internal.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
But we're thinking of moving the
So I mean, that
The-
makes it even less.
Bridge.
covered bridge
Yeah, so you
or
might lose a couple feet.
Yeah, it's
inside.
a small amount of change. So can we give Terry some expectations that we have so that he can
You don't have to do it tonight.
develop the plan? Well, I want to.
Well,
I think,
every time we meet is the only time we can all talk about
No,
this.
no, what I'm
theory.
saying, even if you wanna gel on it till the next time,
Yeah.
quite frankly, I've already done a lot of these,
Mm-hmm.
so I can spin it up together. I think your main question would be, especially if you're gonna move that butterfly garden, do you wanna use that whole space like you were saying? because you're also talking about maybe moving the rocks to a different spot. Did you wanna use the whole space for that, or do you wanna only use a portion of it, or whatever? That's really the only question I would need answered tonight. Everything else can be in dribs and drabs, it doesn't matter.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Is there a reason you wouldn't put the sensory garden in the center where the rocks are?
I can do it however. Again, this was just the idea to give a conversation so we can start talking about it, right?
So I love the design that with the circle with the teardrop shape.
Everybody goes for that one.
That's very cool. The funny thing is,
I
of course,
didn't do that
it
one.
looks beautiful from above, but no one ever's actually ever going to see it from.
Actually,
above.
So on the ground plane though,
Yes.
what happens is those teardrops are actually mounted up a little bit.
Yeah.
So you do feel that when you're on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a very nice sort of.
One thing I forgot
organic
to
feel
talk
to it.
about that's important, and that would be cool to have, is a reflective spot too, right, in the site area.
Yeah.
So anything that's reflective, kids love to look at themselves and their surroundings around there, right?
What kind of maintenance and long-term durability issues would be around something like that? Like, how long would something like that last?
You would use stainless steel or something. It would last forever. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a mirror.
Okay.
This is a mirror because it's right out of school. But it doesn't have to be that.
You could do one of those ball things that
It can
they
be
have in
anything
gardens
that reflects a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah, you could even and I don't know. I see these things I think on TV for the watering things that hold the water in them and have a long tube and
Yeah.
stuff. You could get a.
Yeah, I don't think you have the budget for those, but yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Water would
like
be wonderful, wouldn't it?
They're cool though.
combine the water and
They're
the.
cool. I actually did one where you saw those multicolored sticks, you know?
Yeah.
We did one where it was water on each one. The water was very important for this particular project. And it was fed underneath. So even when we had, hot months and it's starting to come down, that was always at the same height and it was always bubbling. It was kind of cool, brought them right around a path. It's pretty interesting, yeah.
So speaking of funds, how are we funding the natural?
So Weston
Much are
is
we-
donating whatever design work, obviously. They don't pay me anyway, so.
Thank you.
We work with Bill to get a pretty much you're paying what we pay. On the
And then we'll
plant-
have to
on the
fundraise
plant
for the
material,
rest.
yeah.
So we have to
Okay,
fundraise
I
for
guess
the-
the question is,
So this
Well,
one,
you're gonna, first off, in this area, it sounds to me like you're not gonna have a lot of water anyway. You've got a lot of other stuff that needs to get addressed.
Yeah.
right,
So this is gonna be minimum for the first year anyway, right? I don't know how far you have to be before you start getting in the screening element too, from the neighbors. If that's a priority, then that water takes priority first.
and I David and Amanda, I think Steve has been working with you directly, right, on the abutter berm screening thing. Do you guys have anything you want to share about that, or?
yeah, can you tell us anything? Because some of us don't know anything about what's been going on with it.
No, I mean, it's very early discussion, so, there's a discussion between, obviously the berm exists, but also a fence up there and some plantings. We, wanted to get out of the winter so we could walk the site with him, and the snow a couple of weeks threw us off.
Right.
Yeah, but, so anyway, so that's what I'm getting at. Even this, you may wanna wait, you may wanna put some of the smaller elements in, but no plants, until you establish, because you wanna be good neighbors, obviously. Establish that buffer zone, a visual buffer zone, and then you can start doing this kind of thing.
Isn't the buffer zone already in the cost budget?
That's my understanding, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm talking
included.
about the irrigation.
Right.
Right, 'cause
But I don't think the irrigation that needs to be dealt with. I don't think that affects whether or not we.
Yeah, well, because you have to, that's what I'm getting at, you have to find out what your water budget is, okay? Because this is in my mind, this is priority, number one, and so whatever water goes here first until they're established. And then you can back off and start doing some of these other things. Number two, to me, number two would be turf, because you're gonna have to hold this area down. You're gonna need a space for these kids to play in. Even if you only have a couple elements in here just to kind of get it started and kind of get the idea, and then you can come back, whether in the fall or next spring or something, and really jazz this up and do it right.
Yeah.
I see it as something that grows over time, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, it would be great to be able to release something like that fantastic at the opening of the park. I just don't realistically see it
No,
happening.
I'm agreeing with you.
I guess my question is, isn't the water for the turf and the buffer zone are being done regardless by DPW, right? They are going to need to come up with a plan for water for that themselves, right? No matter what, because that's
Yeah.
not our.
No, that's my point. So if that water budget is satisfied and you now have excess water, you know what I'm saying? Then you can start figuring out
Right.
what else we can do.
He's saying there's not gonna be enough water to do everything we want.
You may not have the
because-
infrastructure, like
Right.
how many hoses are you gonna run across here, you
Right.
know?
How much pressure, how much water can we,
Yeah, and Steve is good, he's very good. You guys are very lucky to have him, quite frankly. He'll be able to tell you what he's gonna be able to accomplish or not.
yeah.
But we could
Wasn't he thinking about digging a well, though, for the irrigation?
That's when the
That's later.
fields are established.
Ah, okay.
But in terms of Sandy offering to truck in some water. I mean, what level of stuff can be done with trucked in water?
Very little. Yeah. Very little. I mean, 1 gallon at a time is gonna be tough. Not only is it a long walk, you know.
Well, how about this? How about we focus on developing the plan, and then we can chunk it up after we have an agreed vision, right? And the plan, then we can chunk it up based on the watering and funding and all that stuff. But at least we'll have something that we can move forward with and sell.
Yeah, Terry, if we had a finalized plan, could you phase it out for us and say, okay, here's finalize what you guys want. Here's what I'd recommend for phase 1. Here's the timeline. Here's phase 2.
Yes,
And assumedly making phase 1 appealing still,
Yeah, so
not,
that's
not
what I'm
looking
saying.
like
So just for an example, so let's say we move the butterfly garden to another zone, I think that'd be better. And the rock thing winds up wherever I saw in that other thing. And you devote a little more space in here for this thing, and I could do that cool thing in there, right? I would establish all of that hardscape that's gonna happen. Hardscape meaning whatever pathways, it doesn't have to be, you know, all that
Right.
kind of stuff. And not plant the beds yet. Just have them set, ready to go, but not plant them. Until you actually have this amount of water that you're gonna need.
Then we should be adding this to the fundraising list, that somebody can sponsor
Yep.
specifically either the garden, or the irrigation, or
Yep.
whatever. Because that's the kind of thing that lends itself to a nice big sign with the corporation's name and, you know, naming.
this garden
Rights
sponsored by.
So signing is important even whether you have the corporate sponsor or not.
Yeah.
But if you do have it, you know, you would have, you know, Touch Garden or something like that, sponsored by blah, 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 with your, wherever that logo was, is pretty nice. With
Yeah.
that logo and everything on there. Yeah.
That's the guy that did the logo back there, John Bowden.
Good job, John.
He's a talented guy. Thank you, John.
Just a quick question, could you get any of the local garden clubs involved in maybe donating a couple of plants?
Yeah.
Not to take away
Right.
from you.
No.
I
So
agree.
there's-
That's exactly what I was
I'm
thinking.
just gonna go there.
You
So
know?
there's about 30 garden clubs in Chelmsford.
Right.
So it's like crazy, right?
Mhm.
I think if dragging them in would help you.
I mean, if we could get some starter or like low water plants that for the first year
Well, that's
that
what
we
I'm
know
saying.
none of this is going to stay, but it will.
It
Be
could
green
it
in
could
this
be temporal,
area.
You know, you could set it up just
Yeah.
so it could be all annuals the first year,
Right.
you know what I mean? And then
Right.
bring in some of the other stuff, yeah. Sure.
I have some forsythia that you can gladly have.
That's gonna be a good
All
work.
right, so, but the starting point for us is gonna be to develop the plan, right? The
Right.
overall plan, and then we can sort of chunk it out as we move forward,
Do
so.
you guys like the
Agreed.
idea of the circle thing of the teardrop shapes and?
You
That,
can
I
go
like how
back-
that brings you around and kind
You
of.
can go back to that image if you want. That's a powerful image because it's a
Right.
labyrinth and.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's got the labyrinth already
Right.
in it. It's got the labyrinth we've been talking about forever, but it integrates it into the garden
Yeah.
thing. And I love how it encourages exploration
we
with the
talked
kid.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would really encourage exploration of
So-
kids and
So,
stuff.
I didn't do this one, this isn't mine, but I've done, you know, modifications of this. I always make the spaces narrower over here. Because you're only passing through, this is more of a public space.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's in Toronto, I think. And when people go there, it's jam-packed, you can't even get in.
I was gonna say, I have no concept of scale either, actually looking
Yeah,
at
so
this.
this would be, about five, a little bit more than 5 feet, I think it is. But it'd be a little more on this scale, where it's only, 2 or 3 feet wide. You just need enough for one person to walk
A
through.
wheelchair?
Wheelchair can get through 3
Okay.
feet, yeah. So that's good.
So you were trying to go for 2 across, so someone in a wheelchair and their parent or friend or whatever would be
Well,
doing
here's what I
it.
was gonna say, so not every path would be like that.
Okay.
Different paths would be smaller, then there'd be one that kind of zooms you all the way around that would be wider,
Okay.
yeah.
I like the what that creates. What I don't think necessarily fits is that I would want to see a clear way from the shade structure to the other side, to the climbing area and maybe to the open field. So maybe the spiral isn't the shape, maybe it's some other.
Well, I think there's an outer path, right? So you'd run the outer path to get
Well, we can take all that
across.
in consideration, but I'm
I see what
sorry,
you're
so
saying,
everybody
yeah.
saw this, right? Everybody gets this?
Yeah.
Okay, go back to that other one.
Which other one?
The plan that you, that I
okay.
The one he gave you, I
that
think.
you jazzed up for us. This one. So here, we had it going around anyway,
Right.
and so there's a clear way to come over here. So kind of what you were saying.
You just make the outer.
It would just be here.
Right.
And then that's kind of cool, because that also takes into consideration some shade,
Right.
Right.
not just the shade structure, but natural shade.
It gives you an outer path to run out, but you can keep
Which
spiraling
would be
in.
still part of the thing, if you want it. And again, I'll spin it up. You guys take it for a test drive and say yes, no, whatever.
So what I'm hearing is that we want to make that interior part adjacent to the shade structure primarily the sensory garden, right? That's the
Yeah,
sensory
yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah.
And then the butterfly garden gets moved to the outer
Yeah.
fence perimeter garden thing.
Mm-hmm.
We want some sort of a sensory pathway. We want some sort of a reflective area feature, reflective
Well, the
feature.
reflective thing would be in the sight zone. So wherever the sight, you have these different senses.
Right.
So some of it's gonna be mixed in. So for instance, normally I put the taste things all together,
Okay.
and the smell things all together. But then usually the sight things I move all the way around there so that they're drawn to different
Okay.
little pieces.
And we want raised beds on some of these. We want raised. Did you guys?
Yeah.
They'll be
Combination.
mounted up anyway, but then you could always put, I'm gonna say container, not meaning necessarily a clay pot, but something that's a little raised up.
Like the
Some
barrel
things that you really
things?
wanna draw attention to, like that sensory plant or, whatever.
It might be with with a natural stone edging, right? That would raise the bed up. That would match.
It
with
doesn't have
everything
to, I'm
else.
not talking less, it just has to be.
Right.
Little
Just
bit,
there'd be
just
some
to give a
variation.
little- yeah.
Like a half a foot and then.
I can't talk, railroad tie.
Yep, so that's another tactile thing. The only thing we don't
I'm just thinking of
wanna,
those to frame a section.
yeah,
that you
the only
look
things we don't want any,
Nails.
what's that? We don't want any pressure treated, yeah,
Right.
because it's got the copper.
And they've said throughout the process that they want to keep wood out of it. So I don't think we want to use wood. I think we want to focus
Okay.
on stone
We
if
could
we
do
could.
stone.
We want to include the signage.
I'm sorry, before you go further, so the other thing about having things raised up a little bit is when you do have somebody in a wheelchair, they can
Yeah.
get into it,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right,
It's not
exactly.
down, right?
So reflective, we want the signage. We want some sort of a animal imprints. Do you guys want to do that? Do we want to keep the scavenger hunt thing? Or do you want to take that out? The directing people to the other parts of the
I
park?
like the scavenger hunt.
Yeah,
idea.
Yeah,
why
different
would we
conversations,
take it?
Isn't that a separate conversation, that scavenger hunt?
Right,
It would be kind of incorporated into the sensory garden, I think is what you're saying, right?
And maybe identified on the sign primarily.
Right.
I'm sorry, let me clarify that. So it's not just here, you're gonna try to direct people to other zones, right?
to like the trails out in the
Yeah,
back.
to the trails outside of the playground.
Right,
Go
right.
beyond the playground
So
bounds.
like, there's an example of like some cards we could buy that have QSR codes that you
Yeah.
could scan and get information or whatever, or, direct people to different parts. We already kind of have a couple of kiosks out around the trails,
Mhm.
so it would work to tie those in.
Yeah, so in Gloucester, I did a project where we had a walking path along the harbor, and we had little signs on them, and we put those QR codes on them.
Yeah.
And that helps people, see the next thing, but also gives them a whole history lesson and everything.
Right, and that's kind of what we had in mind.
Yeah, and so I think that's a great way, especially kids, everybody's got a smartphone, boom.
And the sign would kind of
Brings the
sell it.
technology into it, but actually drives them into nature at the same time.
But then they can self-direct also.
Right.
You know, so don't forget, what you're creating, I mean, we're creating a park, but what you're really creating is self-discovery, like, not just children, but everybody. They wanna, have this self-discovery, and you want them to go just as far as they wanna go. Right, so, all right, I don't feel like doing that QR code, I'm just gonna run around like a banshee.
Right.
Fine. And then you get some other little kid, like my little dorks, that wanna know every single little thing, so they'll go along and do every single thing, you know what I mean? So you have this thing where they're able to go just as far as they want, and they feel very comfortable in the space.
We want to eliminate the rocks and boulders out of the that area and leave those only in fall-safe areas, right?
Yes.
So no big rocks there, because we'd have to put a fall-safe zone around it.
Yeah, you could have, if you decided, you could have a couple of, like, sitting benches type of thing, like big pieces of granite or something, you know, in here as well.
As long as we put big signs on them and say, these aren't for climbing because we didn't put a fall zone around it.
Right, we'd have to surround it with wood fiber.
Yeah, that could have it around it, yeah. But I'm just saying, if you decided to do that, that could be another thing where maybe a parent wants to rest, or the kids, you know.
Or
whatever.
grandparent, or.
Do benches in a park have to have a fall zone around it? Because if it's a stone there for sitting, then why,
Was
what?
it 18 inches is the height?
I couldn't find any. I found a 10-inch max for homeschools, but I couldn't find anything for parks. So I just think at this point, I think maybe it's best if we just say no stones in there, unless we're going to do a sitting stone with a wood fiber around it. But I think that creates more problems later down the road.
Now I'm thinking about it. Let's check that out. I think it's 24 inches, and if you measure a seat, it's actually 20 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I can help you with that. Well, we can
Okay.
check that out.
I mean, if you can find some kind of
Other
regulations.
parks I've done, we don't put a thing around it.
Right.
Even if kids are climbing up on it, I think it's 24 inches.
I think if it's specified as something inside, I mean, it's not like people are putting EWF around the benches, right? If you make it look like a sitting space and not like a climbing, like if you have one rock for a, I don't know.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I agree with you. You see benches, other locations, they don't have anything around. Yeah. As a matter of fact, most of them have a hard surface now where your feet go. Just what you were saying before, people move their feet around.
Right.
So, all right, anyway, go ahead.
Other expectations would be that there wouldn't be anything that would block the line of sight from the shade structure to the different areas around, right? So there wouldn't be anything over, like, how high?
So
3
my
feet?
question, before I answer that, my question is, what is the height of the shade structure is it a frame, like a wood legs or something? Oh,
Yes.
like legs?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you're seeing underneath it?
Yeah.
So you don't want anything more than 4.5 feet tall.
Yeah, I would say.
And even then.
Yeah, even
that
then
would
you
only
probably-
be- That would only be sporadic.
Right. I would say the general height, you probably don't want anything beyond 3 feet where most kids aren't going to be.
Yeah, but there may be a few, otherwise it becomes very boring. And so you want a
Right.
couple of things that are higher and
That's
lower.
the
Yeah, okay,
shade
so you're able
structure.
to see through, yeah, okay. So that's, usually this is 8 feet.
But if we want to be able to see
7.5.
kids on the other side who are in the 3 foot height
Well, 3
range.
feet, if they sit down, you're not gonna see them. So that's what I'm saying. 4 feet, 4.5 maybe, but 4 feet, and then, going all the way down. So you have a little bit of a mixture.
Right.
So nothing higher than 4 feet?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Yeah.
And that's good if you're gonna move the butterfly garden.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You need that, that's a given, we need that.
Yeah.
It's a learning experience to see them,
Yeah.
not as little caterpillars, really,
I think you'd be stunned at the number of kids that are attracted.
It's kind of nice putting it in a separate spot up there too,
Yeah.
because now you have two type garden areas, and it's
Exactly.
not all crammed into that one spot. So
It's a nice break too. It'll hide the fence.
Well,
Yeah,
the
that's
butterfly
true,
thing is
yeah.
also more of a passive activity. You're not really running around seeing it. You really have to stand still, otherwise you don't see
Right.
them.
Right.
yeah.
Probably encourage more
Okay.
butterflies too. If they're not in the middle of the crazy, then butterflies
That's
are
my
probably
point.
more
If
like.
there's too much activity, they're not.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh God, man.
Thankfully, they don't hear sound. So.
I would also suggest that we don't do anything percussion-y with the sound stuff for the neighbors,
Yeah.
the benefit of the neighbors. I mean, I don't know, wind chimes are one thing, but something that you beat on, I know that there was some
even then,
It could be like bamboo, it wouldn't be delicate.
Yeah.
I know, but there were some real issues around that from expressed at the public input session about not creating any real loud stuff. So I think in deference to them, I would suggest that we don't do percussion stuff.
I like wind
The current
chimes.
PVC one, how loud is that? And
That's my question. There's already a PVC thing with.
It's not
So
loud.
you
It's-
never
it's not
hear
a,
it.
it's not a, it's a, you put your hand over the hole. You're not hitting it with anything.
All right, so let me
You
just,
don't find
let me just answer that. So
You
there are plenty out
Okay.
there that actually direct the sound where you want it to.
Right.
Okay.
So
You
directional.
direct the sound towards the
Yeah.
playground, towards the fields where people are
Yeah.
screaming anyway.
And I can send you, I can give you, if you get to that point, I can send you.
Okay.
I would
I
say
would-
that's less of a priority.
Yeah, I would
You're
just
gonna
say
have
that
plenty of other stuff there.
maybe if we can focus on other stuff rather than this noisy stuff.
also in terms of sightlines and design, I know you've got the center growing area, but if we could create spokes out to, each play area, in terms of the shapes, that'll give us our sight lines that we want. And also may make it too easy of moment,
Yeah.
may not keep people as engaged, but at least it would create the sight lines for the parents sitting in the,
So here's how I'm gonna answer that. I'm gonna keep it with the curves, because the curves are much more interesting and will keep people's attention. Sightline, when you see it go in, you're gonna have plenty of sight, there's not
Okay.
gonna be an issue, yeah.
Plants
I'll
are
agree
tall.
100%, if the stuff is gonna get taller, then we need to start framing those views so that you can specifically see certain views.
okay,
But when we're keeping the stuff lower,
okay.
you're gonna be able to see over that with no problem whatsoever, yeah.
Okay.
Especially if you're looking from Google Earth, that's.
Are there any other features that you guys would like to talk about?
Rocks.
Oh, yes. So Chelmsford Bass Rocks needs to have some sort of a container
You had a
display.
picture of one or a whiskey barrel.
Yes.
Because I wanted to address a concern that was sent to me by someone, I forwarded it to you.
Is that this thing?
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah, I
it's,
actually never knew what that was, now I do.
now you do, I'm Sandy, I run Chelmsford Mass Rocks,
Okay,
and we paint rocks and we leave them around for kids,
yeah,
okay? And this would be one of the larger ones, and someone asked me, what's to keep a kid from picking up a rock and throwing it through a windshield?
or another person.
Well, with all the rocks around nature, no one has ever broken a window. We hide the rocks, we leave them at businesses on a windowsill or, I'm not gonna give you my hiding spots, but the places you walk in and you put a rock right on a little bench or something. And I'm in over 200 rock groups because I'm obsessed with it, and I asked a group of rock administrators, and not one person has ever had an issue. There might be an issue with somebody coming and taking them off, we're gonna replacing them.
That's a good thing, though, right?
Yeah, it is, yep. Well, not if they take them all,
Yeah,
And this one here, which the rock spoke to me, look at this. Someone painted that one up. Isn't that cool? But we want the kids to be able to come in and touch them and look at them, and if they wanna take it home, the parents are aware of it, then they go out and hide it. I'd like to get involved with the Daisy Brownies over there, to have them paint some rocks too, to leave at our garden, so I wanna get in touch with her, but we definitely wanna have something there.
that
Okay.
should be in that sensory garden,
yeah.
okay? So I live out in Rockport, I mentioned that before, and we actually have a beach called Back Beach. And they have it's actually the cobble, it's the rounded, worn, those,
Like river
this big, yeah, all the way down to that size. People take them all the time, they're not supposed to, but nobody has thrown them at anybody or any vehicle.
That's
And this is
what-
going
yes.
back like forever,
Yeah, I know.
So I don't think that that's an issue. But
Okay.
people do like to touch them.
Yes, they
It's a
do.
tactile thing.
They have texture,
don't
some
see
of these
that all
have
the time.
texture on
Yeah.
them, they do,
Well, even smooth, no texture is still texture.
Because some we leave plain,
Yeah.
we leave plain, but we'll paint something on there, and
Mhm.
it's geared towards the kids.
And sometimes the paint, the paint that's now raising it up a little bit, you can feel that on there too.
Sure.
So if we incorporate it into the sort of the sensory part of it, which I agree with, I think that makes a lot of sense. Could we make the container part of the sensory thing? So we don't necessarily. I'm just not a big fan of the
No, the square thing, I'd rather have like a whiskey barrel or something.
I'm not, yeah, I mean,
You know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing a cool copper, shaped thing that the container, but it doesn't have to be a formal container. But it'd be, you know, kind of the shape of that teardrop almost, coming around and being part of one of those,
Something
especially the
that's-
touch one.
it fits in with the whole other theme of it, and maybe it's just a part, maybe it's a part of the teardrop.
Yeah.
And what defines it is those white, the white gravelly rocks underneath, right?
Right.
So
and
that
then
defines your
my
spot,
rocks on
and then a
top,
little
yes.
sign that says,
Our rocks.
that's
Mhm.
consistent with the other signs talking about touching and smelling and feeling and all that,
Mhm.
right? So it's kind of a plan thing. And as far as the issue about throwing, I can see where somebody might have that issue, and I guess we just need to go into it knowing that if it does become a problem, that we'll just have to take it out.
Right, I
Right?
understand that. But what's to keep somebody from, again, I haven't been down here, but to go across the road and pick up a rock?
No,
from
I-
the road,
yeah, yeah.
You know, and, you know.
But I'm just saying that we just have to have that expectation set in our mind that if it does become a problem, we'll have to take it out. But I don't foresee it being a problem.
I don't see it being a problem. I know
Not
a
the
couple
stuff that
of
you guys do.
kids on the autism spectrum who might do that kind of behavior if they're, provoked or something. But generally, I don't see where, throwing rocks at people is a usual playground
No.
kind
There's
of
gonna be rocks
doing.
there that aren't painted.
Unless you're playing down in New York City where the rock is the ball and you're playing stickball.
Yeah. Elisa, did you have any?
So, I don't know if everybody has been to this park, it's called Teardrop Park, it's in Lower Manhattan, it's very famous. And they actually have they went to a huge quarry and they recreated the glacier till, that came from glaciers of Lower Manhattan. And so there's a lot of rock there, it's gorgeous, you should check it out online.
There's also one up in Washington Heights. That's all the natural granite
Well,
that was
that
in.
one's natural. This one
Yeah.
You talking
wasn't
about
natural,
this?
and they brought all the stuff in to make it look natural. Yeah, that's the one. It's
Google
unbelievable.
teardrop.
But they have lots of loose rocks there too. And this is Lower
And it's in New York
Manhattan.
City.
Right.
Nobody throws anything.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And in the Bronx, they have all the South Bronx, which is a very rough area. They have all brand new things. They have some rock there. Nobody does that.
Okay.
This is not the South Bronx.
Are there any other comments about Chelmsford Mass rocks use? Is there any other things that we want to identify as being part of the design plan that we haven't talked about, or not being part of the design plan that we have talked about?
Sounds great.
It sounds wonderful. Someone posted a picture that someone in the cranberry bog had taken a bush and hung Easter egg, and they're gorgeous eggs. And somewhere in the park, I'd like there to be some sort of just low trees or bushes that would invite that kind of activity. That
Then you're gonna have to sacrifice a few of your sight lines or use
Well, put it
something
around
like your
the-
structure. Yeah,
put it around the around the edge somewhere
yeah.
against the fence.
Yeah,
We've
but
done-
any kind of that colored ribbon or plastic, any of that kind of stuff really attracts a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that people would feel free enough to do that too.
Yeah, or it could be a volunteer group
Yeah.
thing too. The Friends of Roberts Field has done that with the Birds of Roberts
Right.
Field.
I was just thinking about the birds you did for the
Yeah.
winter.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely in the realm of
Okay.
possibilities.
Hanging from the trees around there?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they were. They're not there now, but yeah.
Yeah, Bill hung a big fat turkey from one of them.
That's a different story. So, do you need any more information from us to? Okay.
Not at the moment.
When do you think you would be able to come back to us with a
Well,
with
I'll send, when do you meet next?
April 26th tentatively?
I'm voting that we move that a couple days earlier.
What's
Okay, anyway, so it's a couple weeks away. So I'll at least have, I don't know if I can come that day or not, I'll have to check, but I could at least have what we talked about kind of mapped out.
by?
Before that date.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can have it. And some further suggestions about, the phasing thing that we kind of
Mhm.
chatted about and stuff like that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Oh,
much,
thank
guys,
you.
really.
This is
You
amazing.
got a long drive ahead of you too. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I was gonna say, I used to live out in Annisquam and,
Okay, yeah.
well,
right
I
around
rented-
the corner.
I rented out in
I live in
Annisquam.
Pigeon Cove. That's where I live,
okay, yeah.
But
When I-
once you go there, you know, even if it's a long drive, it's still great to get there.
Yeah. I have to say, I got a job in Chelmsford and I was like, can't do that commute every day, but I do miss it.
I drive a really nice truck, and I make my own hours. So.
Yes, that helps, not going at commuter hours.
Yeah.
And,
Okay, well, good.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay,
Well,
nice
thank
to
you.
meet
Thank you,
all.
Terry.
Thank you.
Guys, take it easy, huh?
Take care.
Nice job.
This is like
Who has kids?
fantasy land, practically.
we have kids.
Mine's 20 now, I don't think.
This month we're going to for autism. So.
Okay.
So let's finish up our meeting. Sandy, we're not
Oh, I'm
quite
sorry.
done. That's okay. We're still alive too.
Oh gosh, okay.
So the timelines, I don't believe, have changed anything. Like I said before, we're still on track for the grand opening, and the as far as I know, the equipment's been ordered. So I don't think anything here has changed. The signage, at the last meeting, you guys talked about the signage plan, and I wanted to kind of circle back on that if we could.
I couldn't deal with those people down there.
I guess at the meeting before last, we talked about doing signage with the four opposite-sided structure. And then as I was looking for that design that's in the middle there to send to Steve for a cost estimate, I ran across the other two structures, right? Which I felt like kind of better fit with the, at least in my mind, aesthetically fit with the covered bridge idea. Plus, I ran across the one on the far edge that had the seat built into it, which I thought was kind of cool because it made it multi-purpose. It made it actual function.
Yeah.
Then, in listening and participating in the meeting, you mentioned that, well, what if we incorporated the signage into the entryway? And so I pulled up a picture and just wanted to show you that I think it's doable. I think we could.
On the inside.
Yeah, first off, let me say that I envision the panels as you can either do single-sided panels or you could do double-sided panels, right? So I think we agreed at that last meeting that we wanted to do 4 panels total, right?
We'll
So-
go with 4 sides, right? That's what we're.
4 panels. So 4 panels is really a two-sided sign. So all 3 of those sign kiosks would hold 4 panels. So it's a front and back on the one with the seat and a front and back on the side. But with the rocket box square thing, it's one-sided, right? But I think that we could use the new structure as the signage as well, because if we did either maybe just one side of it as the panels and left the other side open, or did maybe just the entry part with the signage. You know, I mean, we could configure it however, you know what I mean?
I think we could do it so we didn't block off both sides all the way down,
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
but still have the signage.
The only concern I would say with that is if you had the signage inside, you know, I'm just hypothetically thinking if someone's there looking at it, they're then blocking the path into the park, right?
Not if they're sitting down at the.
Barry?
Can I raise just a concern? It just seems to me, I don't like the idea, and I'm trying to, in my mind, articulate why, but I think the problem that I'm having is that your bench sign, like on the picture on the right and down at the bottom, it's kind of a different, it's a different element altogether from the entryway bridge. And it seems like that entryway bridge, maybe it's the purism, but I'd like to see that keep kind of its original pure look to it without mixing it with signage. Again, it's I know I didn't say that very well, but it's just sort of the way I'm seeing it right now.
I don't see it that way. I think that the covered bridge could still look like a covered bridge. It would just look like a covered bridge with maybe especially if it's halfway in, if the perimeter fencing splits it in half, maybe just the front two panels are
I see what you're
signage, and then the
saying.
back part is still open. You know what I mean?
point up there.
I can see what you're saying now,
Because
yeah.
I can see,
I don't think it would be a disaster. I
if
just-
you had a panel here and
Yeah.
correspondingly here, you still have 2/3 of the bridge open, but you'd have, I mean, you could have this side and that side and this side and that side, and people could sit in there and read it, and then you still have most of it open, and it's kind of it's the entryway, it's where you would go to see. I mean, it brings you in and has all the information there for you to, I don't know, I kind of really like that idea.
And it adds a little shelter too from the wind. It's a windbreak as well. But anyway, so that's, and then the other option would be to have the freestanding sign. My concern with the freestanding sign, it needs to be close to the main entry, which is gonna be where the covered bridge is. There's just not a lot of real estate between the interior walking path and the fence. But if we did want to do the separate standing thing, I see the benefit of having the bench seating there, because people could kind of hang out on the sign while,
Yeah.
it's kind of that, I like that multi-purposeness of the thing.
I agree with that.
So I don't know. The good thing is that if we can kind of come up with we can make either of these work, I think, with the sign panels. It'll fit in, but it's just a matter of what you guys aesthetically like.
I love the ones with the seats. I think, having one at the beginning of the trails in the back and one in the front, and that could carry the theme through the park in terms of the covered bridge look. And
We could also start, as long as the panels were able to be, removed, right? We could start with them, like we're talking about, in the covered bridge, and, God forbid if it's terrible and it just doesn't work out, we can always take them out and build the other signage if we needed to.
Yeah.
I mean, again, just time permitting, budget permitting, what can we get done in the next, 2 months?
I mean,
And if
was
the bridge is getting built anyway, if we can't get the signage on its own, piece of real estate, let's put it on the covered bridge, see how it works. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. We can always move the signage.
Right.
It's
I
not
guess
the end of
that's
the
the other
world.
question is, do we have a concrete enough plan for the covered bridge to be completed by the,
No, but we're working on it.
okay. Because I was going to say,
I thought it was, yeah.
I know we want it, and I know we've heard that the person who previously did it is willing to, but I don't know if they're on the same schedule as we are.
I'd hope to be able to
Okay.
say definitively that it was this or that, but I can't. So
Right.
it feels like to me that we will. It's just still sort of a moving target.
something about signage we hadn't thought of, and again, I'm just taking something from the Children's Connection or Family Connection playground in Billerica, where their signs are at different levels. Different purpose signs are at different levels. So the donor plaques are on rocks. They're inset into rocks as you enter. Signs with the rules are up, higher. This is the 2 to 5 or whatever the small age group is, kind of halfway in between, and it labels who can be at who that park is meant for, or part of the park. So we've been thinking that everything has to be in one place, and maybe we don't have to have it like that. Maybe some of the things can be separate and done differently than have it all as plaques or as signage per se.
I hate to say this, but I'm sorry, I'm tired. I feel like we had a long discussion
Okay.
about signage and voted on things, and I don't remember what they were, but I thought we already
Okay.
discussed signage for an extended period of time and came to agreement, so I don't want to redo that.
I don't like the square box. I think the square box takes up too much real estate. After I found these other two, I felt like that better represented what we were trying to do with the other structures in the park. So I appreciate that you're tired, and I am too, but
Well, it's not just that I'm tired. I thought that we'd already voted because we'd already discussed this with people who were here at that meeting who aren't here tonight, and I just.
Yeah.
But Bill's saying he's seen more and so forth.
I think all you're saying is that the four panels don't necessarily have to be in one physical location.
Right.
Okay, yeah. No, I just had a comment, my 2 cents on the integrating the signs within the covered bridge. The only thing that makes me nervous about that is, again, that's one point of entry to the park. You got people funneling in from other directions. You could easily miss where those signs are. I mean, how would you know they're in there? To me, they're hidden. I feel like it should be exactly the opposite. You know, something standalone where I can see from far away that there's the signs. I'm going there to find out about this place rather than tucked inside of a structure.
Well, I don't think they'd just be I guess my way of seeing it is that the outside of that structure looks a lot like one of those signs, right? From the outside, it's going to look like a little roof coming down over a sign, just like that looks like a little roof coming down over a sign. You're going to be able to see part of the panel from the outside, right? One side of the panel from the outside of the structure.
So you're saying having signage on the inside and outside?
Oh, okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought you had to sort of walk under the covered bridge and then they're above the benches.
Right, but there's 2 sides on the panels, right?
Right.
So you'd see the outside, you'd see the panels from the outside, and there's information on the outside of the panels that you'd seeing, and it is the central. We are saying it's the central, entrance to the park. So yeah, that's where you're going to go for.
And I feel differently for a different reason.
Okay.
I mean, I feel the same for different reasons. I think, echoing what was said earlier, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like we're.
I think we need to find out if the covered bridge is going to be done. I think we have to, because if it's not, then that's going to change the conversation.
If they're facing outside, then I like it. I don't like it for a different reason, but yeah, I don't know. But anyways, that's my biggest point was they need to be
visible.
Visible.
I agree.
Yeah, they definitely shouldn't just only be visible if you're under the covered bridge. Excuse me. I think that would be a shame.
If I can combine something that Marcus and
Elizabeth.
I loved what you said about. I'd love to see the signs eventually get put into like a rock frame, something like they did over at Castle Matrice. But that's out of the question right now. It's not practical, but. As what Marcus was saying, maybe we start out just from a practicality point of view, putting it into the covered bridge, and then look down the road at a more permanent that maybe takes it even beyond what we've got here. Because budget and time and everything like that is a real factor in figuring out what to do with these things.
But it is going to come down to if the covered bridge is going to be ready for the.
As of right now, we're more likely to be able to buy a sign than we are to be able to schedule the covered bridge to be completed.
Say that again. We're more apt to what?
We don't have a specific schedule on the covered bridge. We don't even know that it's actually in plans to be finished in time, and it would be a far easier job to pay for a sign than it is to make sure that the covered bridge project is completed in time.
I feel pretty confident that it's going to be built. And if it's not built for the grand opening, which I think it will be, I think building a structure like either really the box or the one of the 2 other ones is a pretty straightforward volunteer project.
Or didn't Steve say if you sent him the dimensions, he'd look into what it would take to put it together?
He'd give us a cost for it, yeah. Right.
So,
and that was an Eagle Scout project. So generally, an Eagle Scout build project is done in a single day. And the scout asks various friends, can you drop by and help for a little while? So it's like a community build kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a weekend project.
It's not
a big deal.
The
So
no, the signage. Like if someone were to build something.
So assuming that the covered bridge would be built, is it a yes or a no on the signage on the covered bridge?
I would say if we can guarantee, yes, this covered bridge will be done in time, I would say let's trial the signage on the covered bridge and see how it goes. If not, then we definitely need to have.
So you're saying the
something
panels are gonna face out, there's two-sided panels mounted on the walls of the covered bridge, is that the idea?
So you got four.
One would be a bulletin board, and then there'd be the rules and story. There'd be rules and story, bulletin board, donor sponsor, and there was one other one. I think it was committees or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So double-faced, probably,
Two double-faced signs, one on either wall.
correct.
But now, remember, there was some discussion about now having that bridge be bisected with a fence.
Right.
So it would be on the inside, the interior, or actually the exterior, right?
On
It
the
would be
exterior where you're.
Yeah, it would be on
It
the
would not be
exterior
on the
portion.
park side, it would be in the,
Right. So you just kind of get, I don't know, I feel like the walking up,
Yeah, you
the
got-
experience of going up to read it is kind of, you're in a corner, you're in a little corner there
Right in here,
between the fence and.
right in here.
You're saying in the front panel.
It's right in here, and then right in here.
Right.
And then the fence would be down
Yeah.
the middle of it if the DPW can agree to that.
And we wouldn't have these on the new one?
I would not expect to. I think these were added afterwards. I think there was an integrity issue with it
Okay.
afterwards. So it would just be the bridge structure
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, it's just one of the things where, you think of, you see what's happening here. I know this isn't necessarily representative of how we play it, but the experience of walking up into the corner here between the fence and the wall to read something, does it permit more than one person to stand there and view it,
I agree with that.
Keep in mind too that the walking trail, the interior walking trail is going to be here. So you're going to
Yeah.
have a lot of people walking around the front of this, right? On the pathway, the internal pathway. You know what I mean? So you're going to be seeing this side, and then the inside as well, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do it, then you're having the covered bridge, and then you're having one of these structures right next to the covered bridge. Because we're still talking about putting it in that same location. So you either have the covered bridge and another structure that's kind of like a covered bridge right next to the covered bridge.
Why does it need to be right next to the covered bridge as
Because
opposed
that's-
to the lower right corner?
Because it needs to be near the main
It
opening.
needs to be at the main entry to the
Main
park.
entry to the
This
park.
is the main entry to the park.
Why couldn't it be near the,
Because that's how we sold it. That's how we've positioned it. It needs to be near the main entrance to the park.
We could also put it on the inside of the park, at the entrance
True.
on the other side of the
Yep,
bridge.
with the seating, and use the seating. There's
I
a
mean-
lot of green open space there on that right-hand side now that the fence line goes over.
Yep.
And you still have the welcome sign for the Friendship Park, assuming that's going to be replicated. I
Mhm.
think it should be.
yeah.
And then the seating area could be the rules and donors and stuff, and it makes it multi-purpose.
I think if you have the signage on the outside, it makes it more welcoming to entice people into the park.
if we brought it up to where the walkways, you come in from the cars and then the walkways separate for the two entrances, that would be violating,
We've just
The
sold it as being
expectation-
near the main entrance to the park, and that's the main entrance wherever that thing's going to be.
But-
Wherever that.
We're putting the donors for. We're telling people you're not going to get a plaque on a swing, but you're going to have a sign right next to the playground
To the
for
main
the equipment that you purchase. So I think it needs to be right next to the playground.
To the main
We're-
entrance.
Yeah, and we're telling sponsors that it's gonna be near the main entrance, so we have to
Bill?
adhere to that, yeah.
Bill, could you pull up the design of the park? Or one of them?
This is probably the best one.
Too much. How about the next one up?
Oh, you want the zoomed in version of the
You just
park?
want the playground?
You just-
Yeah,
we're
just
on
the playground.
Yeah.
Yeah, one up or one below. There you go.
But the thing here is you can't see how close the pathway is, right? Look at
So I was thinking of where the,
see where the entrance the pathway
So
is.
there's not a lot of, I see what you're saying though, there's not a lot of real estate on the outside of the fence area, in between the fence. Yeah.
In here,
Yeah.
so this is where the fence line is gonna be from here to here.
So how much-
Yeah, it could be in here, but look at where the covered bridge literally abuts to the pathway, right? And if you put the other thing, it would have to be probably over here, or I guess over here, because you will want it close to that side.
Yeah, because how much space is between the pathway and the fence?
Can you zoom in on
Is
that?
it a foot? Is it 2 feet? Is it
It's not a very big
inches?
image.
Because that's what you wouldn't put it on the other side of the walkway. So there might not even be enough space. Is there any way to zoom in on that picture? Or?
I don't know how to do it.
If you hit control,
Bill, come to the lower right.
or that too.
Just hit either hit the saucer. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Yeah.
You know, and that sidewalk is not, shall we say, cast in stone. They can move that around. It doesn't have to be absolutely straight.
Move your cursor up onto the picture, you can drag it around. There you go.
Yeah, so you can kind of.
So I don't remember what some of the content I mocked up was, but were there not, this is gonna be general park rules,
Playground, it's all
just
playground specific, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we decided to go with just playground because we're gonna have a general welcome area down by the
Parking lot.
parking lot as the original master plan for the whole park, for the whole Roberts Field, is that there's supposed to be a welcome area down
I think it's
there.
right here.
What's wrong with this spot right
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I kind of like that.
Inside.
Yeah.
It's inside the fence line though.
I
Is
don't.
that a negative?
Well, I think it's a negative for people if you're trying to sell that your brand is being seen by a maximum number of people in terms of you have purchased this. You want just the people going into the playground to know that, or do you want people outside the playground walking by to see the signage?
In other parks, it's on the inside.
Another
Yeah, I was just,
possibility.
yeah, because I mean, there's
Not
plenty
a
of.
castle
I don't know
of
if this
trees.
works, but you could put the signs somehow. Now, wait a
It's
minute.
not close enough to the
Let
main
me
entrance.
finish. And then you take your fence and you slice it down. So now all of a sudden you cut.
But the main entrance is down by the,
It's got to be
down
close
there.
to there.
It's gotta be
yeah.
next to
This
that.
violates.
But it's if we put it on the interior, right? It's not like think about the fence. It's not like a 8-foot fence and you can't see beyond. It's a 4-foot high chain link fence. So if people are walking on the path and we have the signage on the interior, they're gonna see the sign from the outside of the park.
So
It's not
would it
like,
be
you know what I mean?
parallel with the, it'd be parallel with,
So- yeah, hold on, I'll show you. So almost have it kind of like here, right? Or like either like this and the seating here.
Well, we're
right?
kind of talking about the buddy bench being right in that area,
Well,
right?
the buddy bench is gonna be like over here.
No, we were talking about the buddy bench being more between
Right
the
here?
two.
yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about the buddy bench being more between both age groups.
I'm just saying.
It can be a sign and a buddy bench, all in one.
Right? How much space is this?
It's not a bad idea.
There's nowhere to put the sign. It's not gonna work because you put the sign here. Where's people gonna go to look at it?
how,
You're gonna have it, this little space here where they're gonna feel like they're in a hallway. If it's facing this way, and you can't face it this way because then they're gonna have to walk behind it against the fence.
The only other possibility there, if you're gonna do that, and I don't like the idea, but that is you make them single-sided signs. So you have 4 panels.
Yeah, and we already had this discussion, and I'd really like to replay the YouTube video that was
Line of
of
sight, all that stuff, it's great.
whole discussion on this.
You know?
Yeah.
So, if you do the like we said, the 4-sided one that we're talking about, if you do that here, you're running into a huge problem around the real estate, like Bill was saying. I don't think there's a way to make it happen. You're not gonna put it out here, that doesn't make any sense. So, the only place I can think of putting it is here, or you do the panels on the covered bridge like we talked about.
Aren't those 6-foot wide pathways on the outside?
This right here?
Yeah, so isn't that actually more like 6 feet between the fence and the pathway?
It's a good question.
It looks like it.
The scale here?
That's a
Well, they can move the pathway out. They can move that around. There's nothing that, you've got all this space out here. They can take the pathway and bring it out. You know, they can pull the whole thing out if you need more space.
You can
I
do
mean,
that?
can we combine, like we were just showing, the buddy bench, if it really needs to be there, the buddy bench and the rules signs, and the signs, on, and put them right here?
You could do a combination too.
No,
I mean,
because.
isn't that 15 feet or something, 20 feet long,
The
how long
buddy
is that
bench
little
is
bit?
supposed to be like a
Give
kid
yourself a little bit of room and
bench.
you can modify the path.
You got the right, I mean,
Combination.
if we're gonna have it on the outside, we gotta move the path. I think.
Well, we could also put the buddy bench across the walkway in that other green area.
Well, like here,
No, the buddy bench could go somewhere over here, can't it?
Yeah, it's in between the two.
good,
Because that would put it in relation.
and here too, we put in relation to all three.
Yeah.
In the shade.
I mean,
I don't know if it's-
Or it can go over here, because here's the younger area.
No, the younger area is up farther.
Oh, that's the younger area, okay. And then I think this is more centrally located anyway than putting it over here.
What, the buddy bench?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
especially for its purpose, which
it
is
just seems like
for
a natural
somebody to
place
be.
put it right there. You walk in and you look
There's
to
the
the
sign right
right.
there, yeah.
I mean, I don't know,
I
I know we
agree with John.
qualified 4 different types of things that we wanted, and my mock-up happened to be 4 panels. But if we're really worried about how much, real estate the signs are taking, I don't think there's any reason why I couldn't make that information sit on 3 panels.
Yeah, we already had come to the
Yeah.
conclusion that we were gonna do 3 panels and a board, right? Isn't
A bulletin board,
a
correct.
bulletin board?
We did.
Yeah,
That's why we wanted.
I feel like maybe everyone needs to review what was already agreed upon, because.
We agreed on the 4-panel rocket box, and
Yeah.
I raised issues with the 4-panel rocket box, and that's what we're discussing. And you brought up the idea of putting the panels on the walkway at the last meeting, and so we've discussed that.
On the walkway?
On
the
the
covered
entryway,
bridge.
on the covered bridge. So we're discussing that, and now we're discussing if we would
Placement.
put it on the inside of the fence line versus the outside of the fence line.
The
These
discussion
are all
shifted
issues
from-
we have to address
Yeah.
because we're selling this stuff to corporate sponsors.
I still like the idea of having whatever signage platform we use, whether it's a 4-poster or a bench or whatever. I'm have it in my mind now to have it on that interior corner right there, just because I don't know, it just feels right. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's
No,
just when you walk, when you come in, it doesn't take away from the covered bridge. I know there were concerns about that. Keeps that aesthetically looking and appealing. From outside, it looks good, and if somebody's walking the path, again, it's a 4-foot chain link fence. You can still see the signage from outside of the park. It's still very visible. So from a sponsorship perspective, we're not hiding the fact that you're a sponsor. I would say we're highlighting it more because it's inside the park and people are going to be more apt to look at it.
You just have to be, I don't disagree with that. You just have to be careful about which panels face out and which panels face in, because you're gonna have almost two different audiences there. Or at least 2 different viewpoints that are quite different, so.
Yeah, and that's the same thing if we were to have it on the outside too, right?
Yeah.
If we have
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you had as I said, a single, and we already voted away from that, so.
Yeah.
To have the kind of footprint of this thing that you've been talking about.
I could certainly see the benefit of having a seated structure, or at least a seat that would face the grassy area that's inside the fence line, like what you're talking about, so that someone could either sit and face the 5 to 12 netplex, or sit and face the open green space inside the fence line.
Can you bring up the picture of the park that has where the actual fence line that Steve's talking about doing is? Because that is not actually the line that the park is.
The nice thing about what Bill just said, though, is you have the seated signage there. Somebody could sit and might want to sit and watch the games. That would be very nice.
You're not going to be able to see the games through the covered bridge.
No,
It
the
wouldn't be
fence.
this covered bridge.
Yeah,
It would
it's going to be
fence.
pretty far
Not the
from
baseball
lacrosse.
games,
No,
but
baseball
certainly the
games are-
lacrosse.
I don't, you can't see the cursor, but if it was where I think Marcus was saying, it would be kind of in this area,
Yeah, that's what I was
right?
thinking,
And it
yeah.
would be parallel to the pathway that's there. And so a person, if we did go with the seated bench, they could sit and look at the netplex or sit and look at the open green space for kids to run and play this way. And it would still be visible with, from the walkway as well. You'd be able to see the signage, the sponsor, assuming the sponsor signage was facing that way, you could see the sponsor signage as you walk the pathway. And then the rules and stuff would be on the interior with a bulletin board.
I think
So-
one of the problems we're having is we're not seeing a to-scale representation what that signage would look like there, and it's hard to imagine just relative to everything else, how big is it? And that's making it,
It's not gonna, it's gonna be smaller than the covered bridge. If that covered bridge is the scale, I don't know if that picture is of scale, but it would be, yeah.
Well, can we agree on some things? Can we agree that we don't want to put the signage in the covered bridge?
I would agree with that.
Not to put in the covered bridge?
you would too, would you?
I wouldn't mind
But
wings off the outside of the bridge that contained the information,
I'm acting.
that were parallel to the walkway, but perpendicular to the posts.
So flat panels on the posts.
That look, that are almost like
Yeah.
wings on either side.
I see what you're saying.
That's why I was thinking about different levels, because we could put signage there on either side with the donors. That's, everyone will see it, not just people in the park, but people walking by. It'll be a very visible, it will be low to start, but, and then the specific park rules and the bulletin board. And maybe if we're doing the committees, although I would put the committees on the outside, you know, the donors on one side, committees on the other side. And then the bulletin board and the park rules within the park.
Okay.
I don't know visually how that would look in terms of the aesthetic.
I think keeping with the discussion that we had originally, I think we all kind of agreed that we wanted to keep everything together. So I wouldn't support that. I would support keeping one structure. Either going back to the 4 rocket box thing, I don't really, I agree with John. I think that putting the signs on the covered bridge, thank you, is it makes it difficult for people to see, and it kind of diminishes the importance of the message.
And I know there's a debate over the rocket box versus the flat panel because of the covered bridge design, right? Is that kind of, we want to keep with that theme, right? And if the rocket box doesn't really go with the theme, is that the concern?
That's my concern.
Right, yeah,
And,
so
and I see the
concern.
I see the additional functionality of turning the signage into a seat as being a benefit.
So from a concession, like what if we took the one on the right and we had it more of a rectangular box, right? So you had two panels on the outside, and then you had a longer panel on either side. So you'd have 4 panels, and you could still put the seats in. It would just be a rectangular box versus just the post with, you still have the same type of roof on it, so it would look like a covered bridge. It'd be rectangular, right? Which is the whole theme of the shape of the covered bridge. You see what I'm saying?
I do. I just don't see the benefit unless we're trying to get more sign space,
Well,
because it creates more dead space in between the.
Well, it wouldn't need to be as I guess as long as what I'm saying.
You've got a problem when you're inside now, and the rocket box, I don't think would work at all. And the reason is, not all directions are equal now. In other words, you're coming in on the pathway and you've got a view of it. You're walking outside by the fence, you've got a view of it. But you have to show the other picture, but you can envision a backside that doesn't get seen. Do you have a picture of the park? Can you bring it?
Well, I guess that's my
Park
concern
diagram.
about the two-sided things, is that the four-sided things kind of encourages you to walk around it, which is, I thought, part of one of our conversations about choosing the rocket box. Whereas the two-sided things, you're gonna look at the front of it, not everyone's gonna go look at the back of it. So you're gonna put the information about the park in the front, you're not gonna go look at the sponsors on the back.
Even though there's a seat there and you're potentially walking up from the parking lot on the pathway, walking past it?
You're gonna be 20-plus feet away on the pathway outside, I don't think.
But you
people
see it, so I mean, it might encourage you to go by it. Plus, there's a seat there, which would encourage you to go to it. And just as much of an encouragement of, even that other panel on the other side would be the same consideration.
You're running it parallel to the fence, right? If you're gonna do it two-sided like the one on the right?
No, it'd be perpendicular to the fence and parallel to the pathway.
You can't. No, you can't do that, because now you got a true backside, you can't see.
No, what do you mean you have a true backside?
Can you bring up the, okay. So now if you make that parallel to the walkway coming in, if I understand what you're saying now, the backside is,
Facing the playground.
it's,
Facing the open green space inside the fence line.
maybe I'm getting tired. Are you saying it would be a line like this, like
Yes.
where my pen is?
Yes.
So now you walk in and you see this.
You see,
This now, this backside of it is completely
That's-
blank.
but that backside has a seat on it that faces that open green space inside of the playground now, inside the
Right.
fence line. Plus, when you walk from the interior pathway down to the, down to the entryway,
You see it from this angle?
right?
You're gonna do that, then you're gonna have to, maybe you do that. All I'm saying is, if it's oriented like my pencil is, you're not gonna have a draw for people to come on that side. I don't know how many people are gonna be in this part of the park. Are you picturing a lot of?
Well, I mean, it's an open green area that that's inside the fence line that we're saying that kids are gonna run and play in.
Yeah.
I don't
If you're gonna do that, you're almost forced to do something like that, I think.
I think that makes it less likely that people are gonna go to it, because it's gonna be
Right
close
next to the
facing the fence.
You want people to be able to have two lines of sight, I'm picturing a line of sight there and there, but I'm questioning if you have a line of sight coming down like this. You're not gonna have people looking at it from that direction, and that would be my concern.
I agree.
So, the rocket box is gonna have the same issue.
I agree, that's why I started the conversation with, the rocket box isn't gonna work there.
Well, I
If
think
you're
if
gonna
there's
put
a
it
rocket
inside,
box,
you
you know that there's multiple sides. If it's the other way, you don't I mean, I hear that there's a seat and there's green area, but if it's a rocket box, you know there are four sides to it. You know you're supposed to see things on either, on other sides of it. If you walk in and if there's a seat on the other side, whatever.
Question, where were you thinking of putting the rocket box?
I think now it's in that, I think we've gotten to the point of where that little area right there is where the signage is gonna go.
This area right here?
Right, no, move your finger up about an inch.
How about you put it here, you make the sidewalks bigger, so people can walk around, come through the bridge, it's right in front of you.
You're thinking like,
Right in the Y.
you're thinking like a shopping mall now, huh?
Yeah,
That's
why be subtle?
I like it.
No,
It's
I don't-
here.
I don't think
There's
we wanna,
nothing sacred about these sidewalks. They can be,
Those sidewalks are the brick that we're looking to.
I'm sorry?
it's the bricks,
Those
plus,
sidewalks are gonna be the brick that we're looking
Yeah, I
to.
know, but
plus you don't wanna impede on the, ADA part of it too. It's gotta be in the
Yeah,
grass.
That would really,
You can't put it in the middle of the path.
plus you
it's
also,
half wider.
Well,
you know,
it'd be
some,
cool if you could have like
All
a
you need
rotary
is what,
around
30, 36 inches?
Jim, you're not
That's
gonna,
ADA
you're
requirement?
still not gonna solve the problem, because even if you did that and you didn't have all these other issues, you got the problem, everybody's gonna go to the left of it coming in, because there's nothing to the right, so it's gonna work in a way that, oh, maybe not, maybe that's not true, but
So I think we've agreed that we're generally where the sign needs to go.
Yeah.
I would support the seated sign, the double-sided seated sign. That's my take. I don't know if you guys wanna weigh in.
Can I ask again about the, having individual single-sided panels just lining that area? You're thinking the total width is kind of obstructive? 6 to 8 feet?
Yeah, I
That
feel
was,
like
that was one of our big concerns
Yeah.
about having the multiple panels.
Yeah, because it looks almost like a billboard.
And it's gonna be a visual block between looking out towards the field.
Right.
Even if you did an L shape?
Which is part of why we've said that the square was take up the least amount of space.
See, I don't agree with that. I think the square takes up more space visually.
Not if your plan is 2 panels wide versus 1 panel wide.
I don't understand.
The
Oh,
bench
so
that you're talking about is 2 panels
she's
wide,
saying
right? You're saying you still have 4
You're gonna
panels
take up
worth of
This
space.
much space.
So you either have
whereas
4 panels worth of space on 2 panels side by
the
side,
rocket box will
back
take
and
up this
front.
much visually. The two will take up that visually. That's what she's saying.
But this is really, if you're looking at the side of it, this is really all you're seeing is if you're looking down it, you're only seeing this. But if you're looking at this, you see this much taken up all the time. And if this is the pathway and it's parallel to it, you still have more visual line of sight going this way, right? Because this is taking up more space. You have less going this way, but there's not really much to see there except for the green area that people would potentially be playing in.
I feel like this might be one of those things where, like a fellow from Western Nurseries, you might just have to go and see it. Like, I don't know, we're making a lot of decisions based on this.
Is this a
We're
pantry?
not sure
Do
whether
we
or
have
not
to go? Do we have to go to the site itself?
Yeah, just bring up.
That's the
thing
tree
and
that
stick
isn't-
it there and
Yeah.
see how, you know what I mean?
That's coming down.
Yes.
Yeah.
If this guy's going away,
Yeah,
it
supposedly.
changes things a lot. Because now you can put your 4 signs right in there.
Why would you put your 4 signs like
No,
20
you
feet from
can't
the
go-
entrance?
yeah,
You're
it's
not
gonna
going to
be-
put it over there. You want it to
Yeah,
be where you enter the park.
Fine, put it right in there. The point is
Yeah,
that
we agree.
tree-
We're in agreement on that. We just
that
don't know if it's
tree-
the.
If that tree goes away, now you no longer have that impeding this line of sight
So-
so much.
Yeah, from people coming in.
It's late.
and-
Let's just
yeah.
poll. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to do the rocket box or the other alternative?
I'm partial to the seating.
Yeah, I like the seated bench in the interior now. I do.
Elizabeth?
I think you've gone back to the wide panel that blocks view that we agreed we didn't want to do, but apparently we've no longer agreed on that, so.
So which one did you want to do, the rocket box or the seated bench?
I don't think it matters. I think the votes have already gone that way.
Adele?
I misunderstood last time. I thought when we were talking about the rocket box, that we were talking about it going further down the pathway, that we were talking more about that entrance area, where people are walking through and not right up against the playground. So I prefer the seated bench.
Okay.
I
So,
like the idea of, putting the donors on the outside in some way and separating the info. I don't feel there's a real need to keep donors and park rules and a bulletin board together. I think the donors have a much higher level of import, and that having them backed by a cork board for, people to put a babysitter available kind of diminishes that importance. And so I think separating the info makes a lot of sense.
okay, but you support the seated bench
Yes.
sign? Okay. So we'll move forward with that. Quick update on the fundraising. We've sold 147 bricks so far. That's as of yesterday. We still have a long way to go to meet the 450 that we're trying to get to 18,000, which will actually be a little less now with if we go with the interior.
Question on that. So I know we talked the last time about getting printouts of the flyers for the Buy a Brick campaign.
He
Yes.
had them
Yeah.
at the fourth meeting.
Yeah, I can get you some. I didn't bring any with me, but I
Okay.
have
Yeah, I
some.
was just gonna. So I mean, if I to not wait till the next meeting, is there any way to?
I can leave them in my mailbox for you in an envelope. If you
I
want
have
some.
some in my car I can give you.
You wanna use
Some.
Yeah, because I'm
I
happy
haven't
to.
gotten a chance to
I mean,
get them
I'll
out.
go with the kids this weekend and just drive around and start dropping them off.
I know Hannaford needs
All
some.
of
I
that.
saw that was missing there yesterday. I got one from
Yeah.
Market Basket. So.
Okay. Yeah, print out as many as you want. I'll go take them out and
Okay.
drop them off. No problem.
Do you want to give a quick
It's
update
not
on?
much, but I can give you these two.
Do you want to give a quick update on the grant writing? Where we are with that? Grant writing. Sorry, corporate sponsorships.
I can tell. The corporate sponsorship, sure, yeah. So we launched the corporate sponsorship call campaign last week. We got the list of companies that we were kind of going to call. We actually had a meeting this afternoon at 6 to 6:45 with a few people who were volunteering to help with making the calls, and so that is well underway, and I believe we actually have. You want to talk about some of the sponsorships we've already closed?
Yep, we have. So we have one confirmed silver sponsorship, and then one confirmed equipment sponsorship as well. And then we have a number of other feelers out. So I feel good about it.
So yeah, good progress.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add about grants?
I have contacted the buy-in people, and I have not heard back from them. And I forwarded the spreadsheet you designed and the list of 2 grants that I found that fit our time period right now. But one of them is $100,000, up to $100,000, and that's the Lowe's Community Grant. So even if Byam used their playground grant, we could be eligible for the community development grant because of the nature of the park.
Great. Okay.
Oh, one last thing I was going to ask you. You were working on potential flyers for the sponsorships too. For those, I gave you kind of a very rough thing.
The brochure?
Brochure, yeah, kind of like something just like this, but for the sponsorships, not the build a buy a brick.
Yes, John actually worked on a draft of that and sent that out to me and you for comment.
I'm sorry, I missed
That's okay. So we should have something on that pretty soon.
Okay.
And then we'll share it with everybody once we have
He's got one.
the drafts done.
This is
Look
the
at
poor
that.
man's, poor man's printed at work, stapled together, just so you can get a feel for what it could look like. But then there's still a lot of work with the copy and the photo.
That's great.
The staples will be on the real version too. We're gonna print it using 2 pieces of paper just like that.
Excellent.
It's cardstock.
It adds an extra
Right,
something.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, Bill provided some feedback this afternoon with regards to thinning out the amount of text there, shortening up the equipment list.
Yeah.
The bit about supporting, I think it's on it's in your right hand back. That piece is a little lengthy, but again, we can tidy that up.
So I was thinking that it'd be nice to have the flat design on the bottom here, right? Not the rendering, but just the flat design. That would kind of sell to that. And then if we could cut out some of this, we could probably add at least one more rendering, if not maybe possibly 2.
Yeah.
And then I was suggesting that we use an image from landscape structures on the front so that we don't give the impression that we're going to have
the
wooden panel swings there.
I agree. Yeah, that's a good call out.
But I think otherwise, it's an excellent job as usual. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I think we could definitely cut down on the items. I like having the under $1,000 items though, just for perspective, to show that there are items available to people if they want to do.
Grouping, and I had said maybe if we could think about, there's some numbers and acronyms as part of those equipment that means something to landscape structures, but maybe not to the
Yeah,
person.
maybe.
So get rid of those and clean those up, make them more.
Yeah, the
friendly.
40-inch DKDB.
Yeah, so I don't know what that
get rid of
means,
that stuff.
but
Yeah.
Someone could translate some of those. That would be
Yeah, we
helpful.
definitely can. We'll,
Okay.
I'll spend some time with the copy and then
Yeah.
we can
Okay.
clean it up.
Yeah, but no, that's a great draft though. It's awesome.
That's
I like
cool.
it. Yeah, as soon
We
as
should
can-
probably make sure we have pictures for any of these easily available if we're gonna hand those out.
Yeah, so we're gonna have I think the decision was to use that vanity URL as sort of their entryway into all things
Yeah.
Right.
fundraising. So I think we just need to give them that one URL. We'll put it, probably should put it a couple of places on the brochure.
Right.
You know, on the back I have some, is there a phone number or are we not?
No, there's no phone
No,
number.
so
Yeah.
double check the contact info to make sure that's all that what we wanna say.
Okay.
And then I'd also have the GoFundMe page link on here. Is
Do
it
you
on
want to
there?
use the GoFundMe page or do you want to use the vanity
Oh, there it is.
URL?
Okay.
They're the same content, basically.
What's the vanity
That's why they
URL?
mirrored it.
robertsfield.org/donate.
Oh,
So it's the same stuff, but it's just, is it a better perception to have GoFundMe or is it a better perception to have Roberts Field?
good question.
I
You
know.
know,
I
in
don't
terms
know the
of
answer.
Yeah.
in terms of corporate, the vanity one is much
Probably.
better.
robertsfield.org?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yes,
so-
because
it's-
the GoFundMe,
Screams small.
screams small donations.
Small
I don't know
donations.
about that. You see the guy who started the GoFundMe for what is he trying to save Toys R Us?
Oh, really?
Trying to raise $200 million on GoFundMe.
So,
that going?
Pretty good. He's raised over $100 million.
send John your feedback on that, and then once we
But yeah.
have that first draft done, we'll send it out to everybody else for comments too.
Okay.
The plan is to, John said he might have some ability to print a few full bleed copies like that at Staples, but if, depending on the quantities that we're gonna need to send out or hand out, we may need to do another version that's just sort of a non-bleed color printer, volunteer-friendly kind of a thing. All right? So, the next meeting, we have tentatively scheduled for the 26th. I'll have to go back to the last meeting to see what other dates, because Elizabeth, you said you wanted to look at.
My daughter's having surgery that day, so I can't make it.
I think it's important that we meet sometime around there,
Earlier in the week, I'd be game.
just because we have the community build that we need to have a long discussion about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to figure out when we're gonna start,
We've got
creating a volunteer list, I guess.
we've got a Friends of Roberts Field meeting scheduled for the 16th now?
No, the 16th was the one that isn't.
19th.
9. I thought there was
9.
something on the 9th.
9th, okay, sorry, that's up. Yeah, it is the 9th, you're absolutely right. So,
So the 23rd or the 19th or
18th, 19th,
24th.
23rd, 24th, 26th, we said no, and then possibly the 30th. I need to check and see when the reorganization is gonna be for the BOS. But are any of those days better?
I'm
They're all
looking
good for me.
at 23rd and 24th looks fine to me. 30th is not good for me.
yeah, neither is that for me. I can do 19th, 23rd, or 24th.
Okay, can I, are those all good for you too, Adele?
She said it.
All days are good.
Okay, so can I get back to you guys with the 19th, 23rd, or 24th based on what TeleMedia can do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I need to double check the availability of this room too. Okay, anything else that you guys want to talk about? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.